I think Tevez going to Juventus, what a coup that was for me. I mean,
on a head-to-head battle, Atletico Madrid can do more damage to Barcelona than the other way around.
Either he's really blind or he's fixing the match. I can't see it any other way.
It is an upset. You would expect Man United to go and win there.
Over $1 billion was paid in transfer fees between the clubs in Europe.
And Bayern Munich are going to be favourites for me against anybody at home in the world. The 03-04 season, actually, Olympiacos have won 8 of the last 10 domestic league campaigns, so there is only really one team in Greece, which we kind of already knew.
Because things have been pretty much decided, just as a quick glance before we go through the table, PSG is going to lock up this thing with one more point. Monaco's solidly in second place. Lille is going to be in that Champions League qualifier position, 7 points ahead of Saint Etienne. If you're a serious talent, you're going back and you're playing for Santos. You're going back to play for, like in Argentina, for River Plate or Boca Juniors, or you're going to Europe.
He looked like the Ryan Giggs of old. He was more creative than any player on the pitch. He made Mata look stupid. He made Rooney look silly.
I am your host, Joe Usello. My trusted co-host, Ben the Machine. Ben, how are you tonight? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 35 of Low Limit Football on Low Limit Poker Radio. I'm your host, Joe Usello. Joining me tonight, as always, Ben the Machine. Ben, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Joe. Yourself?
Good. And tonight we have a special guest co-host with us, Rob, also known as Arctic Messi. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thanks for coming on again. We appreciate it. Just want to say hi to everybody in the chat besides us. The usual suspects, Hot Shot, and it looks like Dr. Bombay has had a change of identity and is now Stefan Jovetic. So welcome to both of them in the chat. Good old Sir Bob in the house. Thanks for joining us. So, guys, it's been, I would say, a semi-quiet week of football this week. Obviously, we don't have any European matches to talk about just yet, but we have had the International Challenge of Champions or International Champions Cup going on in the United States, which is a little bit more of an exhibition type thing that I didn't really put into the show plan or anything like that, and didn't want to talk about it too much because watching AC Milan get absolutely destroyed by everybody is just kind of grotesque. So I didn't want to talk about it too much. But we'll do our usual things tonight. We're gonna jump into our league news, which is kind of holding the place for our normal league stories and scores that we do every week. We're going to talk about transfer stuff, of course, with a nice little rapid fire round that we're going to have with our co-hosts. We're going to talk about the MLS scores and any of the highlights that we can talk about. We've got Ben's Blackburn Corner, or Ben's Blackburn Banter. Blackburn Banter. Let's try that again. And we're going to have Sir Bob's ManCity Corner. But also, Rob, a couple of articles that you wrote for Swole that you sent over to me that I attached to our Facebook page. The Libertadores, I think we're going to talk about sometime around the MLS coverage. We'll almost like bring it back over the Atlantic and back into the United States before we close out things. But wanted to talk about the other article, which was, if I remember correctly, it was on Mario Götze. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it? Rob, do I still have you?
Yeah,
okay.
I just came on. Sorry, it was a bad connection, and I think everything is all right.
Okay. So I wanted to talk more about the Mario Götze article that you wrote. And I'm just as you're doing that, I'm going to go and find the article and put it into the chat for everybody to read. But tell us about the inspiration writing that article.
Well, for Mario Götze, having just left his native club at Borussia that he started since he was about 12 and a teenager, to have won so many silverware at the time, and then at a young age, at 21, I believe, he went to Bayern to become the most expensive German player in the world. Yeah. So it was like basically half of Germany is supporting him, and half of Germany is not supporting him because he could be considered as a traitor. And for him to score that goal against Argentina in the final, it felt like, okay, we best forget about him, that he's a traitor and all that. But no, it was him that made them win the World Cup for the first time in 24 years. It gave the country a bit of unity, in a way.
Mm-hmm. One of the facts that I heard about Mario Götze was he, along with Andre Schürrle, were the first two players from Germany to be born in a unified Germany to play in the World Cup. Previously to that, all the players that were on the team that were playing in the World Cup were either West German or East German originally. Now they're all, of course, Germans. But I found that was an interesting little factoid about Mario Götze and obviously Andre Schürrle. But also in your article, you had listed that he was the youngest goal scorer, and I just closed the darn article, since like 1966 to score a goal for Germany.
Yes, he was at the age of 22, youngest player ever to score in a World Cup final since a German player called Wolfgang Weber in 1966.
Wow, okay, that's pretty cool. So, how long have you been writing articles for Swole? Or are these?
Not for school. I just decided to do it for fun, and
no.
I found a website where you could basically make your own account and write articles about whatever. I decided to give it a chance and write about it.
The website is Swole, SWOL, soccer,
Yes.
soccer without something or other like that.
Limits, soccer without limits.
Soccer without limits. Yep. So
There's the plug.
yeah, and there you go. So, well, I mean, Ben, for you and I, we've always looked to grow this show a little bit. Might not be a bad idea that you and I pen something and maybe get it onto there and see what happens with it. So, I applaud you.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, they could always. We have to get our own page first, Joe. If you can get the YouTube thing sorted out, then we can get a nice little link and go global.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't get to mention it last week, but Ben and I have been talking about possibly trying to set up a YouTube channel where we actually live stream our show with video. So
Okay.
we're gonna take a look at doing that sometime in the upcoming weeks. I'm gonna sit down and actually take some time to do that. So Ben, let's obviously we're gonna be transfer heavy with all of our talk tonight. But let's kick it off, Ben. Let's take it over to La Liga and talk about what's going on there.
Yeah, it's mostly transfer stuff that's coming out of the Liga, as you'd expect this time of year. And we're going to talk a little bit about it when we go into the transfer section, so I'm not going to go too much into detail about the player itself, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the suspension, really, and what Iniesta thinks of the Suarez acquisition. He said, quote, he believes that Barcelona are going to get major silverware this season now. He said that Suarez, I think he's one of the best strikers in the world at the moment. He said he's going to contribute his ambition, ability to score goals, work rate and mobility, which I think we all kind of knew anyway. He also said on the site that he thinks it's a long-term acquisition, so he thinks it's going to be there for the foreseeable future. But the thing that interested me most, I'm going to talk to you both about it really, is the ban. Obviously Suarez is banned from all football-related activity, can't even go to stadiums for 4 months after the bite, obviously, on Chiellini at the World Cup. But Iniesta's hoping that, because Barcelona have put an appeal through to the Court of Arbitration for Sport to try and get the suspension reduced. He said of it, that there's a player that's hidden away that can't do anything. It's a difficult situation. He said it's a great signing, but obviously it's an issue for the club to deal with. But he also said, I just hope for the good of the team and the player, a solution can be found as soon as possible. It's important for the sanction to be shortened as much as possible. Just coming away from the actual transfer, because like I said, we are going to talk about it, but just talking about suspension, to both of you, what do you think about it? If Barcelona, to try and get the suspension reduced for what is a third offence, and I'm not being funny, like if you did this on the street, I mean, by English law, the third time you bite someone, you're spending time in a cell, and yet he can do that and then come back and then have appeal. I don't even think 4 months was long enough, really, and now they're going to try and reduce the appeal. What do you guys think of that?
Rob, why don't you go first on this one?
Well, obviously, I've talked about this in your previous show. I think it was during the World Cup show. Mm-hmm. I've talked about that. As a biased South American, I do believe that the ban is, I guess you could say, it's enough. But in a way, if you look at it from a biased situation, like unbiased situation, neutral, yeah, I think he deserves more. There was I'm also hearing that by the time his suspension is over, the date that it will be over will be the first El Clasico matchup of the league.
Yeah,
Barcelona Real Madrid, and they were talking about how TV executives want to move the match to either Saturday or Sunday. Not sure, just so Luis Suarez can play. But if you think about it, no, it's going to be impossible considering he can't train with the team. He doesn't know anything. He's going to probably be so confused on the pitch, he will perform bad.
He's suspended from all soccer activities or all football. Yes. Yeah, so it's...
Well, this is what I'm saying. If they get the suspension reduced even by a month, this is what they're trying to... This is what Iniesta is saying. You know, they've actually put an appeal through to the Court of Arbitration. So if they get a month taken off, then that would give them a month to prep. Do you think... I don't even think that they should be allowed to appeal this. I think personally that it's quite disgusting. I know Bob's made it apparent in the chat that he thinks it's disgusting. But we've talked about the actual ban before. But what do you reckon about the reduction?
Well, I think what's funny is I think I'm along the lines of everybody else. I think a reduction is absolutely ridiculous. I think the third offense, it's just, obviously he needs help. He needs more than just training. But I think, unfortunately, in my belly, I actually think that there's great potential for this to get reduced. And the only reason I think it'll get reduced is because every single player you talk to, every single player that gets interviewed about the situation, up to and including Giorgio Chiellini, all saying the penalty's too harsh, it should be reduced. And I think the Court of Arbitration in Sport might look at this and say, you know what? There's no precedence. It's probably a little harsh, and I honestly think that if they got it reduced by 2 weeks to a month, I don't think that's out of the question.
Just one other thing. I heard somewhere that there's a clause in the contract. Whether this was a rumor, I don't know. If someone can confirm this, possibly Bob. But there's a clause been written into the contract that if he bites anyone, then there's some clause comes into place with wages being suspended for a certain period of time on top of any suspension as well. So it's a bigger problem for him. But I think when you're signing a player that you have to put a clause in that says don't bite somebody, to me, it's just ridiculous. I mean, we've talked about some funny things on this show, Joe. I mean, officials and managers and players, but writing in biting clauses, I mean, it just seems a little crazy to me. And I can see, Barcelona, one of the biggest clubs in the world, absolutely agree with that. Massive club, massive fan base, massive stadium, one of the best teams as well. But how can you reduce a sentence like this? This to me is silly. This is like saying to someone in prison, come and play for the prison team, we'll knock a quarter of your sentence off. I don't, obviously not on the same scale, but do you see what I mean?
Right. I agree. I think the fact that it could potentially get reduced is ridiculous, but I think that there is great potential for that to happen. And I think the longer this goes on and he's shown, with good behavior and so on and so forth, I think there's great potential that he could get this thing reduced. And I think Barcelona probably doesn't sign him as quickly unless they're certain that they feel like they can get it reduced at least partially. So, and also, Ben, to further your other point, I had heard that in his contract it was written that if he does bite somebody, it's actually a $5 million fine to Barcelona. That he'll have to pay Barcelona $5 million. And Sir Bob, of course, has got something about it in the chat. So, Rob, what are your thoughts while I take a look and see what Sir Bob laid in there for us?
Actually, I have a question for Ben. Mm-hmm. What do you think would have happened had that situation happened in the World Cup, but he didn't go to Barcelona? He stayed at Liverpool.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting one as well. I think that if he would have stayed at Liverpool, I just think that they wouldn't have changed any clauses really. I think there would have been a bit of a worry about the contract as well. But I think maybe when they re-signed him, should it have gone on, they would have had to put something in, along the lines of behave yourself. But I just think this, there's been some crazy footballers, even my era. I mean, I'm not even 30 yet, and I've seen some crazy stuff like, there's a Zidane headbutts and Cantona kicks and stuff like that. But they were one-offs. Okay, Zidane was the second time, but it was the end of his career. But for me, something like this it just seems a little bit out of this world that football's taken on a new level because, okay, you play football and it is a physical game and you can get hurt, but not at this kind of level. If you're doing anything on purpose, which is producing physical harm to another player, to another human being, then it becomes a little bit along the line of human rights, surely. Because if you're a defender or a goalkeeper, you've got to be scared of being bit by one of the players on your team? And where does the line end? Does that mean you can throw half a punch a season, one little knee, to the face per season? Just to me, it seems stupid. It seems stupid. It wasn't cracked down hard enough for me. It should have been banned for a season, I think, or something. Like, the money has to relate to the player, because I believe Bob, he put in the chat, a reduction of 3 million. Is that per year, or is that a 3 million fine?
I think that's a 3 million fine, the way that read in the chat.
3 million fine. Yeah, you can see it, but I don't know. I still don't think really that's enough. But obviously, it is a clause, and it's all relative, really. It's a quarter of a year's salary, so whatever you guys earn per year, you take a quarter off, and it is going to stop you wanting to do something like that. But obviously, I don't think the punishment's been harsh enough, because otherwise he wouldn't have done it again. For him to go onto the world stage and do that shows that the punishments before and the punishment that he expected to get, I think, weren't a big enough deterrent for him to not bite someone on a massive stage. I think it's crazy.
And I think one of the other things lost in the article that we're referring to here, unfortunately, is Barcelona's made other big acquisitions that are going to help them up front right away in Ivan Rakitic from Sevilla and Jeremy Mathieu from Valencia. Especially Mathieu is, a lot of people are kind of poo-pooing it, but the fact that he's a pretty big center back, I think, is such a big deal for Barca in general, because they really need to work on that back four. What do you think of that? Or did I lose you guys?
Who's that to? Me?
Either one of you.
Yeah.
I'm kind of throwing it out there. What are your thoughts on the other acquisitions that Barca's made in Rakitic and Mathieu?
We did talk a little bit about it last week. I think Mathieu, they definitely did need another defender, and we said about that. I believe they've been linked with the Arsenal centre back as well. His name
Vermaelen,
disappeared from me.
Is it Vermaelen?
Vermaelen, yeah. I definitely think that everyone can see that's the position for me. They need to strengthen. I think now, the forward line's out of this world, but I think it was shown last season and the season before that if you really go at Barcelona and their defence, is weak enough to be got at. So for me, if anything, I think those signings are they hold as much weight as the Suarez one. I just think the Suarez one was a bit bigger profile, and that's why it's caught a lot of limelight, I think.
Rob, how about you?
Obviously for me, as Mateo is too, for me, I don't think it's the perfect center back that we need, considering one, his age, and I just don't feel that it's going to be the best solution that Barcelona need when they need a center back. For me, it would have been perfect if they got Vermaelen, Vertonghen, someone like that of that quality, or Marquinhos that's at PSG. For me, it would have been a young center back with amazing quality would have been perfect for Barcelona for this season.
I think the Marquinhos deal is still on the table. I think that's still a work in process, and they've got another month to possibly nail that down. Ben, when we first started the show a year ago, we talked about some of these late acquisitions. Like last year we talked about Gareth Bale. My thought was that adding these players late, really, it takes time for these players to gel. And you've got some of these guys that are on staff right now. They're on the team. They're playing in the preseasons. They're doing the preseason workouts and playing in these special tours. Those are the guys that are going to benefit the most. And I think, like we're saying about with Suarez, he's added early, but he won't get added to the team until late. I don't know that he's going to be a big enough impact on this Barcelona squad, at least up until the December transfer window. I think you may see more return from Suarez starting in the lengthy end of the season, January, February, when legs start to get tired, is where you'll see a guy like Suarez really, really shine and play very well. So let's.
So just one little quote, just to touch upon what Rob was saying about Marquinhos, I know you did say about it, Joe. I think for me, that's the one for me. I completely agree with Rob. I think, like, as far as centre backs go and what Barcelona look at, I just think he's just like for his age as well, just a great marker of the ball, great interceptor of the ball. Good in the air, physical, and such a young age as well. Massive room for improvement. He's a centre back that I really rate highly, and I think if they get him, for me, that's as big a signing, possibly even a bigger signing as Suarez.
I would agree because really when we talked about this Barcelona team, we talked about the need for them to solidify that defense. Their problem last year was not scoring goals. They scored 100 goals last year. Their problem was defending.
And goalkeeping.
And goalkeeping to an extent. Victor Valdez was good. I mean, he wasn't awesome, but I think they've fixed that.
Then again, we don't have a quality goalkeeper in Pinto as well.
No, that was really where they fell apart at the end was Pinto in net, and there's no confidence in Pinto. There's no confidence in the back line, and you saw Barca really suffer. I think it's kind of funny because those last 5 or 6 games of La Liga season last year, it was like the teams were trying to give away La Liga. Real Madrid couldn't put together a couple wins. Atletico couldn't put together a couple wins, and you just feel like if Valdez was back there in net, or if they had a solid center back to go alongside PK, that they would have probably just taken hold of the season and won La Liga. But as it turned out, they didn't win anything at all. So. So Ben,
I think we should. We can talk about him a little bit more later. Anyway, we've got a section on Suarez, haven't we? So, as we want to move it on, Jay.
Yeah, go ahead. Did you want to talk about the Modric thing, or?
Yeah, sure. We can talk about the Modric thing. We can.
We'll do it quickly because I know we're going to rehash it in our transfer coverage. So.
Oh yeah, it was just Modric on the signing of James Rodriguez and Toni Kroos. He's basically just saying that it's going to strengthen their bid to win all 6 trophies this year. He feels it's a real possibility. Mm-hmm. And now that they've won the 10th Champions League as well, it feels there's less pressure on the squad, which you can kind of understand. Awesome achievement. Saying the signing show ambition. I don't think anyone really can argue that Real Madrid have not shown ambition, really, especially with the amount of money they've spent. As far as Rodriguez and Kroos, because when, especially the Rodriguez one, but firstly we'll go to Kroos. Just really touching on it, like me and Joe said last week, both said the same thing. Brilliant signing and value signing. But we haven't heard your opinion on it, Rob. 20 million for Toni Kroos. What do you think?
For me, it's a good deal. Obviously, it wasn't a surprise that Toni Kroos would have went to Real Madrid. I would have thought that he probably would have started at Bayern, considering that he won the treble and all. But in his press conference, he actually said that Real Madrid were bigger than Bayern Munich. But for me, I just don't think it's a good quality transfer, considering you already have. Okay, I guess he would be a good replacement if Xabi Alonso doesn't play as much games. It would be him and Kroos up at the defensive mid. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's, I think the signing, and again, like we said, touch on it lightly, is like you said, Rob. It's Kroos is I forget how old he is. I think he's 26, if I remember right. He's
24.
24. So
24.
I mean, he's Xabi Alonso's replacement, is what it comes down to in the end. I think they're looking at it from that standpoint, is that they're getting old at that defensive midfield position, and they want somebody of quality to take care of that, to take that role, and I think. That's the idea of bringing Kroos in at a young age, and allowing him to grow, working side by side with Xabi Alonso for 1 year, maybe 2 years, where he can learn the Real Madrid way, and then Alonso sails off into the sunset, and Kroos is your new defensive midfielder.
Yeah, when we do, I kind of want to start off with Rodriguez at the moment, just because I've got a good question to ask you both later on. So, okay. if we go over to the Liga, and then we can touch upon Rodriguez in a bit more depth.
Yeah,
later on, and we can get Rob's thoughts.
All right, so let's talk about Liga. There's last week we had reported that there was the potential that Lens would not be allowed to jump into Liga because their finances were not in order. But the country's top sports arbitration body ruled that there's no reason for the club to be prevented from returning to the country's top flight. So this has been thrown into France's Olympic Committee and Sport Arbitration Body, where Ligue 1 was saying that Lens, because their their finances were not in order, were not going to be allowed to come into Ligue 1, and they were basically going to, I believe it was Sochaux who was going to end up back in the league as their replacement, but they've ruled that they've earned the spot to return to Ligue 1, and they should be able to return. Again, Ben, you and I talked about this a little bit last week, but I wanted to get Rob's thoughts on, in general, okay? My view on this particular situation is these players earned the right to go back to Ligue 1, or they've earned the right to be promoted. And it's just unfortunate to me that they would look at books and their financial viability to allow them to stay up in that league. In the end, if they're terrible and they can't afford to buy any players to help them stay up in Ligue 1, then that's a one and done situation. Rob, what are your thoughts of a league looking at somebody and saying, you know what, you're not allowed to come up here?
Well, obviously, if you have earned your way through promotion, you're obviously going to get prize money and stuff like that. And you should. It should be deserved to clubs like that. But for me, if a club deserved to be promoted, especially, it doesn't matter if in a dramatic way or in fashion, doesn't matter if you're first place or second place, you deserve to be in one of the top leagues in Europe. And even if you're going to face big clubs like PSG, Monaco, Lyon, etc., that you deserve it.
I agree. Ben, what are your thoughts on the whole situation?
I did a little bit of extra research in it today. I'll tell you a bit. I mean, it's not my league, but I went and done a little bit of research on Lens, and apparently it was the owner, Hafiz Mammadov, wasn't prepared to invest the extra 10 million in the first place, and this is what caused the financial problems. Apparently, they didn't need it, but the actual president, Gervais Martel, I believe. Him and his staff have tweaked the budget, and apparently they said they was working for nearly 24 hours for them, just looking at the books and obviously going through it with the accountants. And now apparently it's going through, and there's a 95% chance now that they will be promoted according to, if they get recommended. But the thing that I think really that is the next talking point. I mean, go by the assumption 95% that they do get promoted to you both. The problems this is going to cause, because the coach, Joe, the Kambare, refused to do any training sessions and anything to do with the club until the situation was sorted out.
Right. So
this situation is still dragging on as we speak about it. So that means no pre-season, no training, transfer targets have moved on. Even like the best case scenario is this gets it sorted out. Apparently they're waiting for a decision. It's either today or tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Even if this gets it sorted out by tomorrow morning, how much of the pre-season have they already lost? How important is this to a club that's just come up? It seems massive to me. And this, by the looks of it, it seems to be a £10 million differential. It's going to make such a massive difference to him for what. In the face of things, it seems, with all these transfer fees going around and, all the money being spent, I know 10 million is a lot to a club coming up, and, you can't really relate it to some of the bigger divisions because the French is not quite as in the public eye. But these problems is going to cause, Joe. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think it's going to hurt them a lot? Do you think a much larger chance, of them coming straight back down because of the lack of preparation and, even not being able to bring in the players in time?
Oh, I think it's enormous. Especially, just looking at the names that they're missing out on for the transfer targets. They were looking at Marcel Tisserand, who's a wingback from Monaco, and Alphonse Areola, who's the goalkeeping. He's the backup to Sirigu at PSG. You've lost those guys. Those guys have now moved on. So when you look at that, where they're not getting their transfer targets to come in, which hurts them because they're looking to strengthen their team. Now you turn around and the coach is refusing to, resume trainings and that sort of thing until this gets ironed out. These guys are starting off on the back foot. They're starting way back, and it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on them. I think this will get ratified either today or tomorrow, like you said. like we'd said, that this was really just a recommendation from the CNOSF, and the French Football Federation still has to ratify the decision before they can, before they can put it to bed. But I think they're already starting where, like we said, these guys, these other teams, these PSGs and the Monacos and them, they've been playing for a couple weeks now. They've been working out, training, playing some of these exhibition games, preseason games to get themselves ready. And here's Lens, who's just coming into Ligue 1, or they're hoping to come in, and their hands are tied. They can't pick up any new players. They're not having any training sessions. They're not doing anything until this gets fixed. And I think it's going to set them way back in the grand scheme of things. So, but it's going to be interesting to see. I'm sure Ben next week will report on the final outcome of this for Lens, to see if they do advance. If they do finally officially advance into Ligue 1, or if they're going to be kept down, and what the fallout is going to be from that. So, let's head back over to the Bundesliga and see what's going on there.
The talk of the town at the moment. Before I'm going to touch a little bit upon Rob's article afterwards, but it's Roos coming back from injury after missing the World Cup. I must admit, I missed watching him at the World Cup. I was kind of looking forward to it at the beginning of the season, but it's such an important player for me. I mean, fourth top goal scorer in the Bundesliga. Coming from midfield. A left winger that really can play anywhere in midfield. Can even play at number 10, and in my opinion, you could probably play out and out as well. Scores goals, wicked fast. And I think you could see the German team were missing just that little bit of creativity in the middle and pace. And I do think that although they won the World Cup, I think they would have been even better with him there. To me, he is absolutely pivotal to Dortmund, especially with Lewandowski going as well. I know the guy that came from Juventus, the name eludes me, Joe, the joint owned man. What's his name, sorry?
Ciro Immobile.
That's it. I'm not, the Italian's not in my blood. But yeah, I still think that for there to be any kind of competition for this Bundesliga, he absolutely has to be fit and firing for me. Pivotal to Dortmund, yeah. So really, it's all about him. 16 in the Bundesliga goals and 23 in all competitions. So it'd be good to see him back, and hopefully he can keep scoring goals for Borussia Dortmund. I know with all the other players, we didn't really mention him that much last season, really, Joe. But he really massive player for Dortmund.
Yeah, Rob, what are your thoughts on Marco Reus and his journey back?
Well, obviously, as what Ben said, I also missed him at the World Cup. I thought he would have been, for the starting 11, it would have been perfect for him to have won the World Cup. But yeah, an injury right before the match. It's right before the start of the World Cup. It's sad, but then again, you can't deny the talent that he brings to the Bundesliga. And I hope that he is stronger and will do good things for Borussia, even as they miss out with a lot of players like Mario Götze, Lewandowski. He's going to be the, I guess you could say, main star of the team. Mm-hmm. Now, for now.
And I think, like Ben said, the addition of Ciro Immobile, I think is a great replacement for Lewandowski. I think a guy like him, he's one of the leading goal scorers in Italy last year. So to me, it's kind of a coup. I think Dortmund was able to take advantage of the fact that both Torino and Juventus owned him and got him at a good price, to kind of unload him from both teams. So. And I think a guy like Marco Reus, who his quality in the midfield is really going to spark a guy like Immobile. I think Dortmund. I mean, Dortmund's good to begin with. I think they're going to do well again this year. I don't think you'll see a drop off even with the loss of Lewandowski there. I think they'll do just fine. So, moving on from that story, just running into Italy, I want to talk about somebody else being eyed, and that is Udinese goalkeeper Simone Scuffet.
Sorry to interrupt you, Joe. I just wanted to say something quickly to Rob just about the article, if I can. Actually, to both of you, just before we move on, I know we're going to go and talk on the Italian football, but just about the price of Götze, really. 37 million euros last year, which is, a little bit more, a little bit less, English. But that has to be an absolute steal now. I mean, I've kind of been waiting for him to have that standout season that Rob wrote about. Anyone that hasn't read it, the links in the chat, sorry, and it's a good piece. But like last season, even if we just look at the international games, he actually scored 8 goals in 15 games internationally. 1 in 3 last season for Bayern, playing like attacking midfield. And I think this is the season that we're waiting for. There's still masses and masses to come for him. And to you both, on top of since we've been talking about transfers, and that's what's the talk of the town, that kind of price, say £35 million, that's got to be so cheap now, Joe. Do you think?
Yeah, I do. Especially depending on the quality of the player. But we're looking at some of these, and we're going to talk about high price transfers a little later on. But you're seeing some of these big names go over at the at the £70 million mark and the £60 million mark. We've seen some records set over the past few years, and I think a guy like Mario Götze going for $35 million is a steal. Rob, what are your thoughts on that?
No, it's a bargain, especially considering that he was actually the most expensive German player at the time before Mesut Ozil went to Arsenal.
Right.
It's a good deal for Bayern, and it will continue their winning ways throughout the league, the cup, and hopefully in the Champions League, as they could be contenders to win the Champions League.
No, I agree. I like what Sir Bob put in the chat. Does Southampton have any players left? Ben, we might want to make mention of that when we get to the Premier League, because I was listening to that today. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. We'll brush through Italy really quick. And what I wanted to talk about here was, again, Simone Scuffet, who is the Udinese goalkeeper who just turned down this week a transfer to Atletico Madrid. The reason I find this story interesting is because Scuffet, first of all, there's 2 factors here. One, he's only 18 years old, and the guy's playing in Serie A for an above-average side at Udinese. 2, this kid is highly regarded in Italy as the heir apparent to Gigi Buffon. Your thoughts on Atletico going after? Obviously, they know they're going to have to replace Thibaut Courtois. Do you think this was the right guy to look at, or should they have been looking at somebody that, maybe a little bit older, maybe a little more seasoned? And I can't, just no names are coming to mind right now, but even should they have been in the game for Keylor Navas, or should they have been in the game for Ospina? Sergio Romero, again from Argentina. Should they have been in the game for those guys, or do you think that this aim was a little too high, that the Italian sides just aren't going to let him run away that easily? So, Rob, why don't you go first with that one?
No, I think when you talk about a player like Scuffet, I think that as Buffon, he's been getting offers ever since he was at Parma, Juventus, to go to big clubs. Mm-hmm. And if he does stay at Udinese for a certain amount of time, he could be the heir apparent to Gigi Buffon, and it's good considering the fact that he was a youth product and he's starting for a Serie A team, big one like Udinese at the age of 18, which is unheard of. I think the last goalkeeper that probably would have been like that was De Gea back at Atletico.
Right.
He was a teenager and he won the Europa League.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ben, what are your thoughts on young goalkeepers bolting early, or people trying to hold on to them?
I think, from what I can see about him at such a young age, I mean, I know he made his debut in February, and then just completely sealed his first place spot. Like you said, above average team in Serie A. Apparently he wants to stay and finish his studies. For me, I personally think that it would be quite a decent choice for Roma. I think if he was to go there, I do think at this age, like Rob said, with De Gea, if you can break through and get into a first team of a real big club in your early 20s, then your whole career is set. And I mean, if this guy's got 4 or 5 years on that, but basically a kid, especially in goalkeeping ages. I haven't really got to see much of him. I must admit, there's not much Italian football shown in England. But from what I've read about him, what I've heard about him, he seems like he's got a lot of potential to go forward. And if I was Udinese, I'd want to keep him for as long as possible. And I think, you've got to be able to get some kind of decent fee on him, and it just shows that there are some real decent players still coming from the youth teams of, shall we say, open close bracket smaller clubs. And I'm sure they don't want to let him go. But as is football, I think when a big club comes in, like Roma or Atletico Madrid, I think that he will end up going. And I think you do see teams taking gambles on goalkeepers like this, especially if they believe that they're older than their years, which it looks like it was, because there's not many teams in the world that would have an 18-year-old kid, adult, as their first choice goalkeeper at that young of age, like I said, and especially not in a top division for a semi-decent club. So, I think he will go, but his future is obviously bright, and I think you're going to see him for one of the big European clubs within the next couple of years. And hopefully he's here to Buffon, and we get to see more of him.
Yeah, one of the last little factoids that I saw in this story that I wanted to point out before we move to England is one of the main reasons he didn't move to Atletico or to a non-Italian side is his family wants him to finish his studies in Italy before moving abroad. We got to remember that he's an 18-year-old. I mean, this is a kid who's, in terms of American terms, is just finishing up high school.
Yep.
And think about that, just finishing up high school, but I'm just playing at Udinese. So it's amazing.
I just wonder the pressure that he's getting to be considered the next Gianluigi Buffon, especially at that age.
Of course. I mean, obviously Buffon is such a hero in Italy, but whether you're talking in Juventus circles or you're talking national team circles. I mean, he's the goaltender for the 2006 World Cup. That's all you need to know. Just like Iker Casillas in 2010, he's the winner of the World Cup. The guy's a god in Spain, even after the debacle of the 2014 World Cup. So,
I do think they're going to give him an extra season though. He's going to have one more year, so I think that'll be good for him. That at least he's got some kind of so we say bedding in phase to get a little bit more used to the media attention.
Sure. So, Ben, take us over to England now. A couple of things before we move in there. I know we had one story that we had lined up, but I know the chat's been burning up a little bit about the whole Southampton situation. So why don't you lead us around England and we'll talk about a couple of things.
I'm gonna talk about Chelsea first and the Lukaku situation and Didier Drogba. Talk about Chelsea for a bit. Obviously, we're going to talk about Costa in a bit, but Didier Drogba has re-signed for Chelsea. He obviously had 2 golden boots in a Chelsea shirt, 100 goals in 226 Premier League games. But one of the things we wanted to talk about, me and Joe was talking about before, is how this affects Lukaku as well. I think that this is basically Chelsea making it clear that I don't think Lukaku is going to be a Chelsea player this season. I think we're going to be talking about it again. It seems that he's going to Everton. Again, Martinez has come out and said that, of course, we've signed him, or we're going to sign him, sorry. So they seem to think it's a done deal. 18, 19 million, I think, is around the mark that is believed to be offered. But I don't see this happening. I don't think he will be a Chelsea player. Like I said, I think with Drogba, Torres and Costa, 3 for 1 spot, I definitely don't see him at Chelsea this year. But I don't think that Jose Mourinho is stupid, and I personally think that someone of Lukaku's age, as young as Lukaku is, I believe he's still only 21, to let him go for that kind of price when all the money that's being thrown about, within a few years, as long as he carries on in this vein of form, that's going to, for me, probably double. So I think you could see Jose Mourinho maybe do something quite smart again, and I wouldn't be that surprised if they struck an agreement with Everton for maybe a loan deal again, and then when Drogba possibly retires at the end of the season, they make him a coach, and then suddenly Drogba's coaching Lukaku as part of the striking staff. That's what I could see happening personally. But yeah, I don't. It's an interesting signing. I think Drogba will play number 2 to Costa. Mm-hmm. But yeah, my thoughts on Lukaku, I think that he will probably be at Everton next year, but I've got a feeling that there's as much chance he goes there as a loan signing, and then they do the setup with Drogba, like I said. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Joe? I know we talked about it a lot, and we'll get Rob's opinion in a minute, but do you think another loan season is possible? Do you think that Lukaku will stay at Chelsea? What's your thoughts on the situation?
Well, I think this is twofold. One, the simple point that I want to make in terms of Drogba himself. This move to me is a little more nostalgic. This is Mourinho bringing back Drogba. I think you're right about him potentially becoming a coach on staff in another year or so. But I think everybody, even the common football fan who doesn't have a rooting interest in England, let's say, but knows enough about the sport to know Drogba and know about his ties to Chelsea and that lasting image of him scoring the goal to win the Champions League for Chelsea a couple of years ago. I think there's a nostalgic feel to this that kind of makes everybody happy. And that's good. I think that's great for the game. Now, the flip side of this, and I think that the real point that I want to make here is this. Are we seeing Lukaku go back to Everton for one more year? No, we're not seeing Lukaku go back to Everton for one more year. I personally think we're seeing Lukaku go back to Everton permanently at this point. If I'm Romelu Lukaku and I'm 22, 23 years old, and I constantly see them bringing, Samuel Eto'o in, and I see them bring Didier Drogba in, and I see them bring Diego Costa in, and I see them with Fernando Torres there, who they won't move out of my way. Demba Ba is another name that comes up. When you're bringing all these players in, instead of just taking me off of Everton and moving me into the 11 and playing me where I belong, you're constantly bringing in players. And I think this gets to the point where it starts to put a sour taste in Lukaku's mouth where he says, you know what, enough's enough. Talk to my agent, get me out of here. I'm going to go to Everton. At least, Roberto Martinez wants me there. The fans want me there. The players want me there. And I think that's where I want to be. So I really think this Drogba move is the final nail in the coffin to say, you know what, Lukaku's going to move on and play elsewhere and continue to develop as a great striker. So, Rob, what are your thoughts on the whole situation?
Well, considering that Drogba is, especially at the age of Drogba, how is he, 36, I think?
36, yeah.
When you're competing with that, Diego Costa, who was a top goal scorer, maybe the top goal scorer before Ronaldo and Messi, after Ronaldo and Messi in La Liga, and Fernando Torres, you want to think to yourself, I'm never going to get a chance to start, let alone be a substitute, maybe a rotation player. I won't play enough matches. I'll probably play FA Cup or League Cup. Mm-hmm. And especially since, for me, I think he's going to be a promising player in the next few years. I mean, how is he, 21? So for me, if I was also Lukaku, I would definitely go to Everton. At least there, the fans want me, the players want me, the manager wants me. It seems perfect, not just for loan, but a whole transfer. And depending on the price, Mourinho would probably be insane if he lets him go for a significant amount of money.
I think the only way Lukaku ends up back at Chelsea is if Diego Costa falls flat on his face. I think it's the only way.
Basically a Torres situation.
Yeah, but even worse. Even Torres, in his first couple of years at Chelsea had some moments of brilliance. They were few and far between, but there were some there. If he falls flat on his face, I think Mourinho looks at the whole situation and goes, you know what? Let's keep him here and not worry about it. Also,
regarding Chelsea, I want your opinion on this. What do you think is going to happen for the starting goalkeeper when it's Courtois against Czech?
It's Courtois. It's going to be Courtois.
Going to be Courtois?
Yeah, it's going to be Courtois. Now, what's going to really cause friction in that situation, and Ben, I'm going to throw this over to you as soon as I make my point, is what they do with Peter Cech, because both goaltenders have come out publicly and said, I'm not playing second fiddle. I'm the starting goalkeeper. So I think in the end, they all of Chelsea wants Courtois. Not that they don't want Cech, but Courtois is a better goaltender right now. And I see them, trying to move Cech and having some type of, basic backup. So, Ben, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that Courtois will be number one, and I think you'll see Cech move on. In my honest opinion, I agree with you. I think at the moment he's a better goalkeeper.
Yeah. Any? Have you heard any ideas as to where Cech may move to, or where they try to move him to? I mean, I know. Usually,
I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. But I would imagine that Cech will get an abundance of offers, and
I was reading. Yeah,
he'll.
Can I go? Can I say something?
I think he'll get offers, and he'll definitely be first choice somewhere. Still at a decent team, but like you said, he's completely within his rights to say that especially at his age, you want to be the number one somewhere rather than be sitting on the bench, keeping it warm. Especially in your golden years.
Right, I agree. Rob, you were saying something?
Yeah. No, I was just checking an article from Sky Sports. They said after the friendly against the Slovenian team yesterday that he has no plans to leave Chelsea, even though he was linked to PSG and Monaco.
Ah, okay.
But yeah, he won't. He doesn't insist to leave. He's just going to fight for that position, and whatever Mourinho thinks, he'll start. Whoever starts is in Mourinho's plan.
I think just it's kind of touching on the Lukaku thing again. You've got to remember that Jose Mourinho is very, very smart, and I think with both these situations, they're both quite hard situations to manage, in my opinion, because, like I said, you keep Lukaku for an extra year, and I think the money goes up by 7 or 8 million, especially if he gets loaned away, and I think that's in the back of his mind, and I think he may be, in the background talking to Czech, saying, well, come on, we'll play your cup games, something like this, show me that you're better, show me that Courtois should be sat on the bench and be learning from you, rather than you're past it, sit on the bench and play should there be injuries. So I'm interested to see what Jose Mourinho does over the next season or so with both players, both situations, and see if he once again proves that he is the man manager that we think he is.
Mm-hmm. Now, the one other story that I want to talk about quickly, now, not of the three of us, I don't think any of us have prepared for this, but I did hear a little bit about it today on TalkSport, of course, driving around, is the dismantling, I guess, for lack of a better term, of Southampton. They've had, I can't think of who it was, but Spurs have picked up somebody. You got to remember, Pochettino is now the coach over at Spurs, and I think it's Eric Lamela. I see that you posted that name in chat, Rob, but I can't remember if it was Lamela. No, it was Jay Rodriguez.
Jay Rodriguez is going to join Spurs?
I believe that was the story. Ben, can you confirm that? It might have been Jay Rodriguez.
I'm just looking it up now, actually.
I thought that was the name that I had heard.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen it go through officially, but they've said that they're definitely interested in signing. Yeah, it's close for them, really for Spurs to sign Rodriguez and Schneiderlin as well.
And that's right, Schneiderlin as well. But to this point is that you're seeing Southampton just almost dismantle a team that, personally, Ben, I thought played very, very well, was in the upper half of the Premier League for a while. Were in the in one of the Europa positions. It's just unfortunate to see a team that was, I thought, rather decent get dismantled like this. What are your thoughts on that?
For me, I just think that it's one of those kind of things. I think you see it now a lot, especially with the teams. I mean, I've been saying, on this show and to, football friends of mine for years that this, top 6, top 7 now is, pretty much unbreakable. I don't think you can. It's very, very hard for any of the other teams to break that now. There's just so much money there, and it seems that the new teams that have come through are just pushing people even further and further back. And the teams like Southampton, even like Newcastle now, these kind of teams just can't compete with the teams above. And I think they're always gonna be the selling type of clubs. And I just don't think they're always going to have second dibs on the real big players. I just don't see a lot of movement there. It's kind of, for me, a bit of a brickade. And it's not really that surprising to me that the best players have been pinched by the bigger, should we say, bigger teams. I said to my little brother, who's a Man United fan, the other day, that Man United fan will have, Man United have still got the name, so they've got, an extra year or two in the transfer window where they've got a lot of pull for big players. And I think, they snapped the hand off with Luke Shaw, obviously. I think Southampton are going to miss him really, massively. I really do rate Luke Shaw. I think Lallana as well. I mean, it's so creative for me. I think that that's just masses and masses. And then, of course, Lovren as well. For me, I'm not really that surprised that this happened. And I think probably all of these players had clauses in their contract that said, should a bigger club come in, you can leave. It's just how it is nowadays. The bigger teams come in, And once it goes over that price range, you just can't do anything about it. I mean, speaking as a Blackburn fan, we had the exact same thing happened to us. Our best players were just taken away from us because it gets to a point where you can't say no, and if you can't say no, then you just get the money. But then you can't buy players with that quality with the money because of the size of the club in comparison to other teams in your league. So it's kind of a catch-22 for me.
Right. Rob, what are your thoughts on all this?
I want to say something. Prior to the start of the Premier League, no one would have expected Southampton to at least make it top 7 and have all these players like Ricky Lambert, Luke Shaw, Adam Lallana.
You're talking about last year, right?
Yeah, last season.
Okay.
To attract the attention of all these clubs within England. And for me, if I am Pochettino or Koeman, who is now the new manager of Southampton, for me, if the player thinks that it's a good deal, that they want to play at a big club like United, Arsenal, Liverpool, then they should. And depending on the money that they get, they should have those. I guess they need to find players of the right quality to replace those holes that they need at midfield, defense, forward, etc. But it's almost hard to find one of them, especially. And even if you do, you're probably going to have to find deep down in, say, teams that were in the relegation zone or in fear of relegation. Mm-hmm. So it's not a win-win. It's not a win-win situation.
Right.
Especially if you're a club like Southampton, who recently got this money. You're not a club like United, City, Chelsea, etc. You're going to have to go down and build your way up again with all these losses.
Right. So, all right. Well, I guess.
I was just. Sorry, I was going to.
Go ahead.
Just have a quick look at the odds now, just to give you an idea of where they think that they're going to finish now in comparison to where they finished last year. The page is going so slow. They've dropped Southampton to a mid-table team now. I think that this is the problem. It's like I said before. I don't think you're going to see anyone break that. I think your Stokes, your Newcastles, those kind of teams, Southampton. They were impressive. They've got some young players there, but it's just going to be so hard for them to make this break. And you're going to just carry on to see this. Any decent players they've got, especially the young ones that have come through, show promise. Like Lallana, like Shaw. Mm-hmm. They're going to be hard to replace. I know Tadic has come in, Pele from Feyenoord as well, but you're always going to gamble that you're going to try and get players up to that kind of quality. But when they get to that kind of quality, you're going to see similar things happen. You need a kind of a freak season for something to happen. Maybe UEFA Cup place, Europa League place, something along those lines. Maybe a cup win from nowhere or something like that, just to boost your profiles for you to move forward. It's become a very, very hard league, even harder than it was, and it was hard before.
Right. So, all right. So let's close it up with the Premier League, and I guess what? Maybe now we'll start talking a little bit about transfers because we haven't talked about transfers at all so far tonight. But one of the first things I wanted to point out to kick us off on the transfers, we've seen some big transfers come up, and there was an article on NBC Sports about James Rodriguez and where his transfer ranks overall in the grand scheme of things. And I want to read the top 10 list because, and obviously, Ben, we're gonna do a rapid fire on 5 different players that either have transferred or are rumored to be transferring in this window. So, and a couple that we've touched on already, but I think we're just going to rapid fire our quick thoughts on them. But I want to read this top 10 list and just a couple of things that I want to point out on this list. Number 10, Neymar last year went from Santos to Barcelona for £48 million. Number 9, Fernando Torres from Liverpool to Chelsea for £50 million. Radamel Falcao from Atletico Madrid to Monaco for £51 million. Edson Cavani from Napoli to PSG for £55 million. Kaká from AC Milan to Real Madrid for $56 million. Ibrahimovic from Inter to Barcelona for $59 million. James Rodriguez from AS Monaco to Real Madrid for $63 million. Luis Suarez for Liverpool to Barcelona for $75 million. Cristiano Ronaldo from Man U to Real Madrid for $80 million. And Gareth Bale from Tottenham to Real Madrid for $86 million. What I find really interesting in this list is that now we're talking 10 players. Of the 10 players, we've had Kaká from Milan to Real Madrid for $55 million in sixth place. We've had James Rodriguez from Monaco to Real Madrid for $63 million in fourth place. And then the top 2 transfers, Gareth Bale from Spurs to Real Madrid and Cristiano Ronaldo from Man U to Real Madrid. Real Madrid is one of the biggest spenders on this list. Not to be outdone, their Spanish counterparts, Barcelona. Neymar for 48 million from Santos. Just looking up the list here. Ibrahimovic from Inter to Barca for 59 million. And Luis Suarez just this year from Liverpool to Barca for 75 million. My first question to you guys before we hit the rapid fire, is it me or is it just the Spanish team spending all the money? Rob, I'll let you go.
I want to say no, I think when you're talking about Spanish clubs, you look at possibly the 2 biggest clubs in the world, especially given that Barcelona have won the Septetl, they've won the treble, they've won all these titles in the last 5 years. You expect them to have the money that they get to sign these big players like Ibrahimovic, Suarez, Neymar, etc. As also to Real Madrid, who if you can question financial fair play, you can. But with their revenue and with their president, they have bought in this Galacticos policy, and it's helped them in some ways, but it hasn't, I guess you can say, compared to the success that Barcelona has in the last 5 years.
Sorry, Rob, just to touch upon that point, exactly what you just said. What about Bayern Munich and Man United? Because their revenues are quite similar to those clubs. Does it surprise you that you don't see either of those clubs on the top 10 there?
No. I think the most expensive the most expensive player purchased by an English team was by Chelsea, and that was Fernando Torres, which also, that surprised me a bit.
It does surprise me, someone like Bayern Munich, came out publicly, like, I was reading something about Bayern Munich season tickets the other day, and it's apparently £130 for a season ticket at Bayern Munich when it's over £1,000. Someone said it was £1,300 to go and see Arsenal, so it's 10 times more expensive to see Arsenal than it is to see Bayern Munich. And they came out and said, well, why do we need to take the money off of our fans? We've got so much money, is essentially the short story. So if they've got so much money, I know, great team, and I'm not saying they need loads of improvement. I'm just saying it does kind of surprise me either that they're not on this list, that they haven't seen some of these players, because some of these players must have been on their radar. They must have been. They're like, I know Man United had a bad season last year, but that does kind of surprise me that they haven't come in, especially with Bayern Munich, because it's not like they're not winning things. They've been very successful of late. What do you think, Joe? Are you a bit surprised that Man United or Bayern Munich are not on this 10 list for transfer fees in buying?
I am a little surprised. When you talk about, like you said, the two of the biggest clubs in the world, and Man United. I think Man United is the biggest club in the world. It could be wrong, it could be Real, but I know that they're right up there. And Bayern, of course, is a juggernaut of a club. My only thing is, it seems that they spend their money wisely. Now, in the case of Bayern Munich, they're already at the pinnacle. I mean, I know they didn't win the Champions League last year, but they, over the past couple of years, they've won pretty much every trophy they've gone after. They've played in the last two of the last 3 Champions League finals, so they're kind of there now. And they've spent their money wisely. And if you look at them, obviously being a German team, heavy German presence. There are very few pieces that are not German on the team. Among them, though, you look at 2 of the best players in the world, in Arjen Robben and Frank Ribéry. So they've spent their money wisely to get the targets that they need, that accent their German-grown players to make them one of the best teams in the world. So I think they've just done it smartly. The Man United situation, I think, is a little different. The Man United situation, you're looking at a team that, to me, over the past 2 to 3 years, has actually been in a little bit of flux. And when they did win that championship a couple of years ago, I think it was Sir Alex Ferguson with a little bit of magic, really with a team that most people would consider to be past their prime overall. Bringing in David Moyes, then he's trying to structure the team in his image, and it didn't work out for him at all, as we did see. So now we've got somebody like Louis van Gaal who comes in and takes over for Man United. I think we're going to see Man United, I'm not going to say that they're going to be spenders or big spenders like we're seeing on this list, but I think you're going to see them start to spend a little more money to get the pieces Van Gaal wants, because everyone feels that there's a feeling of permanency with Van Gaal where there wasn't that feeling with David Moyes, and so I think he's going to build the team in the image that he wants moving forward. I think you see guys, there was a mention of Fellaini here in the chat by Sir Bob. I don't think Fellaini stays on the team. I think that he starts to look at those guys and gets rid of those Deadwood type players and moves on to bigger and better things, which is going to take some money, but they certainly have it. So it does surprise me that Man U is not on this list as a spender, and in fact, they're on this list only once as a seller, and that's Cristiano Ronaldo a few years ago. So it does surprise me, but I think you're going to see moving forward, you'll see them spend, maybe not to this level, but you'll see them spend. And one thing I just want to mention quickly, I know we're going to do rapid fire on 5 players here, guys, but I just saw I keep being sport on the television, and they just went to a news break, and I saw a news story come up that I want to add into the rapid fire round. So you guys are screwed. I'm going to throw something at you. But any closing thoughts on the whole top 10 transfer fee market? Rob,
I don't. Sorry, I was going to say I got nothing. I kind of agree with you. They did spend wisely, but it still kind of surprises me that maybe not one of them between both the clubs. I'm not saying that I'd expect them to see on there because they are both shrewd buyers, but it did just kind of surprise me because, like you said, even Man United the year before last, it didn't exactly had what you would call a stellar team, and you did feel they maybe needed one of a really really world class player just to change it up. So I don't know, maybe especially with the Chelseas and the Barca's, Real Madrid prepared to just put money forward that is possibly not value for money, but just to get the player, is not within their it's not their game plan, shall we say? Right. So it's possibly that is the reason.
Just to close the thought on this top 10 list, you've got one English team. I'm surprised you have 2 French teams. You have Cavani from Napoli to PSG, and Falcao from Atletico to Monaco for 51 million. Those both happening last year. Then after that, unless you're named Barcelona or Real Madrid, you're not on this list as spenders. So it just amazes me that those 2 clubs are it. So let's do some rapid fire, guys. And the first one I'm going to throw at you, we had a list of 5 names that we talked about previously. So I'm going to throw the monkey wrench at you first. Tying into the PSG, this is something that I just saw come over the television, is that they're in negotiations right now. Angel Di Maria from Real Madrid to PSG for $100 million. Rob, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on that quickly?
$100 million.
$100 million. I just saw that come over.
Dollars.
Dollars.
I'm trying to think. How much is $100 million?
If somebody wants to convert it while we're talking.
What, in pounds?
Yeah, 100 million to pounds.
It is. Hold on. It's just the best part of 59 million.
Okay, so that would put this move in the top 5, right next to Zlatan Ibrahimovic at top 5 from Inter to Barcelona. So Di Maria to PSG right now rumored for $100 million or 59 million pounds. Rob, your thoughts?
For me, wow, that's honestly, he deserves it. But yeah, when James Rodriguez did go to Real Madrid, you were thinking someone had to go, and surprisingly, it would be Di Maria. But yeah, I see it as a good transfer. But it's probably going to be a bit of a situation when you're going to be dealing with players like Lucas Moura and Johan Cabaye. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's a good deal. But for that amount of money, I don't think it's worth as much. Maybe a little less. Maybe around 50 million pounds or less.
Okay, Ben, how about you? I'm sorry, go ahead, Rob. Finish your thought.
No, but he had a great World Cup, but honestly, when you're looking at that price, it's not worth. He can't be worth that much when you compare it to other players like James Rodriguez, Toni Kroos, etc.
Right. Ben, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with Rob. Really, I don't think he's worth that much. I mean, I do rate Di Maria, but I think for me it's more around like the £45 million mark. I don't. Apparently, I just did a quick whack in there, and apparently Daily Mail, which is not the most reliable source, but still, they said the deal was 63 million. But I mean, saying that, that they spent 50 million on David Luiz, and if you ask Bob in the chat what he thinks of David Luiz, if he thinks it's 50 million pounds worth, then you'll see him go mad. But I don't think that he's worth that really. Like I said, 45 million really, but PSG have shown that you know they've got money to burn, but like it says, apparently the UEFA fair play regulations might come into play actually because of the Luiz transfer, so you might not see this one go through. But I think it's overvalued. That to me that seems a bit of a panic buy, if you ask me.
I agree, and I think you guys are both right on the money in the fact that £59 million, $100 million, however you want to say it, is a little overpriced for Di Maria. I would put him, like you said, in the 45 to 50 million pound range. I don't think I would go much further than that. And like you said, Ben, the financial fair play with the David Luiz move is really going to make this a difficult thing where they're going to have to sell players. Leading to Sir Bob's question in the chat. So is Cavani for sale now? As far as I know, Cavani is not for sale, at least at the moment. But what I always like to add at that point, when you hear about a player that, or someone mentions a player and they're like, oh, are they for sale? I like to add in that, yes, Man United has actually offered $75 million for him because Man United offers money for everybody. So
me and Joe both got contracts.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't signed.
I said earlier, goalkeeper.
So, all right. So let's do some rapid fire on better known topics here. Let's start real quick with Toni Kroos. Ben, I'll go to you first. Toni Kroos.
I personally think it was an absolute steal. I think it's been the deal of the transfer window so far for a player that, you know, for me is still not at his peak. Played really good at the World Cup. I do think there's a lot more to come for him. I think the only reason he left Munich was contractual. The fact that he asked for more money, I don't think he was given it. So, you know, that's it. It was gone as far as I was concerned. And he's playing for a German national side that showed how good they are, and he's starting in that team all the time. And £20 million is nothing now. I mean, you know, as it showed, you're not even getting established players for that kind of money now. £20 million tends to be a gamble, and I don't think that Kroos is a gamble, so I think it's a good sign.
Rob, before I let you go, what I'm going to say is, so that I don't interrupt either of you guys, which I've been doing, I'm going to have you guys throw it over to each other for your reaction. So, Rob, go ahead on Toni Kroos.
Comparing to what Ben said, yeah, I think it was an absolute steal for Real Madrid. We showed how great of his performances he had at the World Cup, and especially for a player as Toni Kroos to be bought for about 25 million, 30 million euros.
Yeah.
For me, it's a bargain. It's a complete bargain, and I hope that he does show his potential, especially considering that he's not even at his prime of his career yet. He's 24, and he's already won all this silverware at Bayern Munich. But I'm really gonna be interested in what he's worth at Real Madrid.
Mm-hmm. Just to close it up, again, like we had said earlier when we talked about it, I like the addition at Real Madrid. I like the idea of him being able to learn under Xabi Alonso for at least a year, and then setting him off on his own on a team where he's going to end up being the defensive center midfielder for 5, 6, 7 years to come. I do like the move and the move now. And like you said, at the $20-something million price that they got him for, complete steal, well worth every penny they'd spent, and going to pay dividends in the future beyond their dreams. So that's my thoughts on Toni Kroos. Let's go to the next one. Let's pick one we really hashed quite a bit. Luis Suarez. Rob, I'll start with you.
Oh, for me, like we mentioned earlier in the show, had he not left Liverpool, the ban would have been. You're going to talk about bans and all that. Had he stayed at Liverpool, the ban would have still been the same, or maybe a bit worse. But for me, I think it was well worth it for Barcelona, especially for a player of that caliber to pay that much money to play at Barcelona and to play with players like Neymar and Messi. It's going to be interesting about how these the front, I guess you could say the forwards, depending on what formation Luis Enrique is going to use, will be contenders to win not only just La Liga but possibly the Champions League as well. Comparing it to Real Madrid as well, who also have their counterparts of world-class players.
Ben, your turn.
Although I don't, not possibly value-wise, I think for me it has to be the signing in the summer for me. I know Rodriguez is making a lot of noise, but for me Suarez is just a complete package for me. I said it last year. I think he was the best striker in the Premier League. He's just one of those kind of players. He's in your face, but he's kind of like a good kind of arrogant. he just scores all types of goals, volleys, headers, squeeze them in. He's got that kind of, not really vicious, not really cheating, but he knows what to do in what situations to get the biggest benefit. You saw it in the World Cup against England, really 2 chances, 2 goals. He seems to move sometimes in ways that the defenders, you're just standing there absolutely stunned. I think he's got that kind of a little bit of Balotelli spirit in him, like a little bit unpredictable, and that for me is possibly the only down point. But like Rob said, he's going to be playing with Messi and with Neymar, and those 3, I think you could be looking at 3 players all trying to get the Ballon d'Or from the same strike force, and that for me is it's pretty crazy. And no matter what you hear from Liverpool fans, he's going to be sorely missed, and I think that he's definitely got a decent chance of lifting the Champions League trophy this year.
My only thoughts on Luis Suarez, other than the stuff that we've already hashed through, is I'm as much as I don't really care for Liverpool, I'm kind of disappointed in what could have been. I would have liked to have seen Suarez stay with Liverpool and see how far he could take them through the Champions League this year. I think they would have really done well in the Champions League with him on the squad. I think they would have been very, very successful. At least get into the knockout stages, maybe even a little further. But it's unfortunate that Liverpool is going to be so weakened by losing him that I really don't think they're going to show well at all in the Champions League, and I don't think they're going to make Europa this year. I feel like he was a huge part of the ability for Liverpool to score at will. And I know they have Sturridge, and I know they have Sterling, and I know they have all that stuff. But at the same time, Suarez, you really saw a difference when he came back from his last biting suspension. And it's amazing we have to say it that way, but but he really brought a spark to that Liverpool squad that they didn't have prior to. So it's unfortunate to see that they're going to end up being the big losers in this. But again, once Barca incorporates him and really puts him into their game plan with the ability to feed him balls from both Neymar and Messi, I think they're going to score 1,000 goals. The question for Barca is, can they keep the ball out of the net? So that's my thoughts on Luis Suarez. So let's move over to the Catalan Giants. No, I'm sorry, not the Catalan Giants, but let's move over to the Madridistas. Let's move to Real Madrid. Let's talk about James Rodriguez, who we really haven't gotten a chance to talk too much about. Ben, let's start with you.
This is actually one that I've got a little bit of an opinion to throw at you guys, but firstly I'm going to talk about what I think, and then I'll lay it on you both. I do think he would have come a lot cheaper before the World Cup. I do think that his good performance in the World Cup, has added, a shed load of value to his price tag, so we say. 6 goals, 2 assists, 5 appearances, and the Golden Boot. But just a player in great form, really. Player of the World Cup, and he missed 2 games. I do think it's going to hot up the places at Real Madrid. I really do. I think he is a class player. He's been compared to Ronaldo with his dribbling, free kicks, goal scoring, which you can see. Really good. Predominantly left-footed, but he can play on either wing, and he can also play through the centre. We obviously all agree that he's world class. I was going to ask you, Joe, just quickly before I go on to the next point, which I think is quite interesting. Do you? I actually asked you last week how much you thought it was worth. Do you remember what you said?
I don't remember what I said, but I think I said they might have overpaid for him a little bit because of the World Cup.
I think so. I'm not quite sure exactly what you said. Maybe 50, 55, but
yeah,
they did overpay a little bit. But this is the thing. I don't want to be the pessimist. I don't want to be the person that says, but what about this? But this is something that I was thinking about earlier that maybe people haven't really been thinking about. But you guys can give me your opinion on it. I was looking at Real Madrid's squad last season in comparison to this season, of course, and for me, maybe not so much Toni Kroos in this situation, because I think it was a really good signing, but value signing, shall we say. But it didn't really seem like there's much of a reason to sign James Rodriguez, apart from the fact that he did well in the World Cup. The squad had such a good mix for me of youth and experience. Players like Alonso, Di Maria, Kedra. Players prepared to work and win the ball back. which you don't see as often nowadays. And my fear for Real Madrid from Bayern Rodriguez is now that Ancelotti's possibly going to feel like he has to, or pressurised into fielding a side that has 4 defenders and 6 attackers. Whilst relegating players, some really good, wonderful players like Isco, Jesse, Modric, Alonso to the sidelines, or making them false, making them leave altogether. So I think they could be a bit unbalanced, and they could be done. What do you guys think about that? Do you think any of that could happen?
Rob, why don't we go to you?
For me, prior to this tournament starting, I've been hearing rumors, even with all his performances that he had for Colombia in the World Cup. I was thinking, no, there's no way that he was going to leave Monaco, especially that he just signed for the club just last season. I thought he would probably play another season or so, and then he would make his decision in January to see what would happen, I guess. And no, I was surprised to believe that Real Madrid were actually going to step up, especially with that amount of money. But for me, it's a steal. Yeah, it's definitely a steal for Real Madrid. I agree.
I agree with both of you. This was definitely a steal for Real Madrid, and when you start to look at it in combination with the move for Toni Kroos, you're looking at them getting younger and getting stronger all at the same time. They're picking up players here where they may be overspending for them a little bit, like we said, where they may have overspent for Rodriguez, but they're looking to keep this guy. This guy is not going to stay here 1 or 2 years. He's going to stay 6, 7, 8 years, just like we talk about Toni Kroos. You're going to see him in that Real Madrid jersey for a very, very long time. I think even though they overpaid a little bit, it's still a great move for them. Turns out that it's a great move for Monaco as well because they pick up extra cash. That they can turn that into something, for them. So I personally, I like the move. I think they overpaid a little bit, but I think in the end it's a lot of quality. I've also heard people talking about how Cristiano is getting older. I mean, what do you guys think about that? People talking about, Cristiano Ronaldo starting to get old.
I'm sorry, like Joe just was saying before we move on. Do you not feel that they might be a bit lopsided? I mean, whether they decide to play Alonso or they're going to play Kroos there, but for me, I think they could be a bit lopsided, a bit Barcelona-esque. Especially if they play 6 attackers are forced into playing it. I think you could possibly see that, and I do think like I said, Isco, Modric, Alonso, all these players are going to be probably forced out of the club, and I do think there's something to look at. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's not totally within the realms of, a bit of craziness going on at Real Madrid. I could see maybe them being a bit of, maybe a little bit of fallout between the players. A lot of players demanding to leave because there's just too many good attacking players. I know it sounds a bit stupid, in comparison to the defensive side of the team, because obviously you've got to play from the back. You've got to be players prepared to defend for your team as well. And I do think that they're going to get rid of players that are really awesome players, like I said.
I could see that happening. The only additional point that I would make to counter that is that's going to be something that's really going to be on Carlo Ancelotti moving forward, and his ability to manage all of their time. And you know how the season turns out. People get hurt. There's always injuries that pop up, whether they be nagging ones like Cristiano Ronaldo had, or something a little more catastrophic that you lose a player like Radamel Falcao. These types of things always happen. So I think it's really going to be on Ancelotti to manage that time. Also keep in mind, Real Madrid is playing for a bajillion titles this year. He's going to need the depth, and the depth is there. And again, I think this logjam of players, I think, will only affect them for about a year or so. Then you'll start to see some of the older players bleed off, and these guys like Kroos and Rodriguez, who are very, very young, start to really come into the limelight. Even to the point where we talk about Cristiano moving on or not playing anymore. You're still going to have Rodriguez in that position and Gareth Bale, who are both very young players, to carry that torch further for Real Madrid. So, Rob, what are your thoughts?
No, I agree with both of you. I think that considering Ronaldo's age, he's 29, you're going to have so many players that you're just going to compete for many spots, even if Real Madrid continue to get more players of the same position. It's going to be it's going to be hard.
I think. Sorry, I mean, I'll ask you, Rob. That I think that the person that's going to really feel, apart from what you said, I 100% agree, Joe. That's what I was going to say. I think this is on Ancelotti. I think if he gets this wrong, this could be the undoing of Real Madrid. But if he gets it right, then I think they're going to be. It's going to be them and Bayern Munich going forward. I think. I mean, I know Suarez has made the Barcelona front line so good, but I just think that this Real Madrid team is, if you manage it right, it is absolutely awesome now. But he's got a lot of pressure on his shoulder. But look, I was going to say, I'll ask you first, Rob. I think the player that's going to be affected most by this is Isco.
Yes, I agree. Isco is, for me, a good talent, considering that they got him from Malaga, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I believe that's right.
And yeah, it's going to be hard for him, considering that he played a certain amount of games for Real Madrid, and he actually did pretty well, if I'm not mistaken. So it's going to be really hard for him and Rodriguez to compete. And for someone like Isco to not have played that many matches, it's wasted talent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's wasted talent.
Do you think he'll stay, Rob, if he don't get many games?
If he doesn't get many games?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. Probably because considering that James Rodriguez, if he's not injury prone as much and doesn't get enough injuries, Isco's going to be probably starting a majority of those matches that he is injured. But if you're going to compete with someone of that caliber, especially who was the player of the World Cup, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Isco does leave after this season if Rodriguez does continue to shine more than Isco has this season. Just
to add to that with Isco, in the chat, Sir Bob has written that Manchester City is after Isco at the moment.
What's your opinion on it, Joe? Same questions.
No, I think I agree with you guys where the logjam is going to create an issue, and the first guy to really kind of wave a flag is going to be somebody like Isco, who would feel threatened. And Isco, I think we all agree, is a fantastic talent, another young player who would make a difference in a million clubs in Europe. So I think you're going to see him move on. I really do think that they will eventually move him, and probably maybe not in this transfer window, guys. I could foresee Isco moving on in the winter transfer window, just because of the same things that I mentioned earlier, where you see players getting hurt, you see these injuries crop up. So it's good for Ancelotti to have this depth, but then once, if we don't have anybody pick up a knock or significant injury where they're going to miss some time, I think they feel comfortable with the squad as they're constructed, and they decide to sell Isco somewhere for maybe even Manchester City or somebody, and at least collect some money for that, because there's obviously the big spenders this year. So that's my thoughts on the whole situation overall.
I also think, just a last point, just briefly, I think that S.A. Rodriguez as well, I think you won't see him come through now. He was another young talent that possibly was going to come through, and I think that stifles him as well, because he's going to be behind Isco as well, and I just don't think he's going to get any kind of look in now, and I think you'll see him disappear from the B and go probably somewhere else in Spain to start. But if he does go to Man City, and it is right what Bob's saying in the chat, $31 million, so just over £20 million English. That I think personally that's a bargain for someone as young and as talented as Isco.
Yeah, £20 million, $31 million is an enormous bargain. So,
yeah.
Let's go to the next. I know we're still in the rapid fire section here. Let's talk about Diego Costa. I think it's your turn.
I think it's Rob's turn actually. I think I started on that one, but we'll let Rob go. Guess first.
Rob, definitely your thoughts on Diego Costa to Chelsea.
Obviously, part of the when Chelsea got eliminated by Atletico in the semifinals, we all were thinking, he's going to go to Chelsea. Everyone knew that he was going to go to Chelsea. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's a good deal. But the only thing everything's all right. I think it's the quality striker that Chelsea need. The only problem is what's going to happen when you're going to be competing. Which strikers, like I guess if Lukaku does stay at Chelsea, he's going to be competing with him, Torres, and an aging Drogba. I guess another problem would be you've seen Chelsea strikers flop within the last few seasons, and I just have the fear that it's probably going to happen to him in Chelsea. But in my opinion, I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going to be a quality player for Chelsea, and I wouldn't be surprised if he wins Golden Boot for the Premier League as top goal scorer.
Interesting. Ben, your thoughts?
I think firstly the price, 32 million, for someone that had as good a season as that is quite decent. I think it's quite good business. Obviously he didn't have a great World Cup. I think that has a little bit of an impact on the price, but I'm not going to put much emphasis on that. It's only 7 games, and obviously there's a lot of variance over that point. But obviously an awesome season for Atletico Madrid. He got constant praise from me and Joe, throughout the whole season. And that came for a reason. One of the main reasons, along with Coco, for me, why Atletico Madrid won the league. I think he banged in the goals for fun in Spain. He's going to be the main man at Chelsea. I think whichever way you look at it, he's going to be number one. There's a lot of talent and creativity in that Chelsea midfield. He's going to get a lot of chances, and it's on his shoulders. I think if you're not going to buckle under being in an Atletico Madrid team, working on 2 fronts to win the league and to win the Champions League, and to get that far. And for me, he didn't look like the situation, the pressure got to him there, so I don't see for any reason that the pressure will get to him going to Chelsea. It's not like he's gone for 100 million. I don't think 32 million is that big a price tag on his shoulder for him to cripple, potentially like Torres. But he's a player, that fits into the Chelsea system really well. I think he's got a really, really high work rate on and off the ball.
Ben, have we lost you? Rob, I'm assuming you're still there?
Yes, I am.
So I think we might have lost Ben. Yeah, I think, let me see if we can get Ben back on the list here. But let's continue on with, I'll add my thoughts about Diego Costa. I think one thing that we're missing here, I think he's going to have a good season. And Rob, I think you're on the money with the fact that that he's going to compete for that Golden Boot in the Premier League, much to Sir Bob's chagrin in the chat, if you see that. He hopes the Brazilian Spaniard freezes to death. So that is Sir Bob's thoughts on Diego Costa, which is pretty strong. But we've always known Sir Bob to be very strong in his thoughts. I think
we should let him be on the show then.
We've asked him a million times. He won't come on. And we also have, that the last corner of the night. I think Ben is having some internet trouble. Yeah. So, well, that's all right. We'll still continue. But so
no problem.
My thoughts about Costa. One thing that we're not talking about is Cesc Fabregas. We're forgetting Chelsea added Cesc Fabregas. I think a guy like Fabregas will help to take away a lot of that pressure. Let me see if I can add Ben back on here again. I think he might be back in the realm, so let me see if I can add him while we're talking. The fact that we have Fabregas available as well, one of the things Ben and I pointed out quite a bit last year during the season was that Chelsea really didn't have that person to finish. Eto'o was nice, Demba Ba was nice, Torres was nice, but none of them really brought fear into a lot of the defenses in the world, like a Suarez was doing, or a Sturridge, or somebody like that. So I think it was the punch that they were missing, and now they've added it twice with Costa and with Fabregas. So I think that is going to be that's going to be a successful pairing for them. So let me just I'm just going to work on getting Ben here. So you know what? While we're talking, any other thoughts that you have on Diego Costa before we move on?
No, I got nothing.
Okay, so let me because I want to go on to that last player that I wanted to talk about in the quickfire, but I want to add Ben back before we do that because it's to me, honestly, of all the ones we've talked about, it's kind of the one that I wanted to talk about the most. Was this particular player? So let's see if we can get Ben on here one more time before we do this. And this show, the problem is this show is plagued with internet problems. It seems. Last week we had massive connection problems, which I've been keeping an eye on the transfer rate for the show, making sure that Sir Bob can still hear us as we move along. And I haven't noticed any issues yet, knock on wood. So, but now tonight I think it's Ben's turn to have a problem. So, you know what? I'm going to ask, as I'm efforting him, Rob, I'm going to ask you my last quick fire person.
Yeah, no problem.
And this is one that intrigues me because this transfer has not happened yet, but it's one of the hot rumors that's out there right now. That is the transfer of Koke from Atletico to, I believe it was, I want to say it was PSG.
PSG.
Yeah.
PSG.
Let's talk about that. What are your thoughts on Koke possibly moving to PSG?
Well, for me, Koke, I've seen him play a certain amount of times for Atletico Madrid. For me, I think he's a quality talent, especially at a young age. I think he's 22. And it's if PSG does get Koke, it's going to be conflicting when you're going to be dealing with midfielders like Lucas Moura, Johan Cabaye, and Di Maria if he does actually go to PSG. But for me, I don't see him moving on to PSG. I think he's fine at Atletico. He wants to play the Champions League and start many matches. And for me, I think he's going to be not only, I don't want to say carry on the success that Spain had in the last few years, but he's certainly going to be one of those players to look on for the Spanish national team in the couple of years. But for me, I think he deserves to just stay at Atletico and continue to play there, unless some other big club wants him in the future. I
agree with you. I think Koke is a fantastic talent, a young talent. This is the kind of player that you would almost think, the way Real Madrid was going this year, that they would key on him. Because of the quality. I think you're right, though. I don't think he moves. I don't think he goes over to that clogged infield at PSG or midfield. I think he stays right where he is and plays. He's going to get a chance now to play with Mario Mandzukic now instead of Diego Costa. He's certainly quality in the midfield, and he's going to be able to improve in Spain. I agree with you 100%. I think he stays. This is unfortunate because I really wanted Ben's thoughts on this one too, because
I understand.
Ben also does all of our La Liga work, so I think he's really had some big time issues here. Let me see. Let's see here, because I've also noticed that Ben's not back in the chat room. So
yeah, he left the chat.
Yeah, so I think he's having somewhat of a big problem. So, but that's So we'll, if we do manage to get Ben back onto the call, we're going to come back to this and definitely revisit the thought of Koke and what his thoughts are. So in the meantime, I've got the page up from this Saturday from TalkSport, but you know what? I think I'm going to go to Sir Bob's listing instead, because he's got a ton of stuff here. But these are just rapid fire. I'm going to give you these transfer rumors, and there are no monies attached to this. They're just players and where they're going. So, and I'm going to run through all of them. And if you have any that you like, go ahead and write them down, and then we'll talk about them. Arsenal to pick up Nani, Aston Villa to pick up Ron Vlaar, Burnley looking at F.A. Ambrose, Chelsea's looking at Diego Godin. I think I want to talk about that one. Crystal Palace, Lewis Holtby, Everton looking at Romelu Lukaku, which we talked about earlier.
I just want to say something. Isn't Ron Vlaar already at Aston Villa?
I thought he was too. That's why I'm looking at that.
I was questioning.
So I don't know why that one's there, but we'll move on. Hull City, Carl Jenkinson, Leicester City, Troy Deeney, Liverpool looking at Divock Origi, again another guy that gained some notoriety from the World Cup. Manchester City, Isco that we just talked about. Man United, Angel Di Maria, which was another landing point for him. Newcastle looking at Loic Remy, but Loic Remy, this is what I'm going to talk about now. I'm going to cut everybody off. I'm going to try to get Ben back on because I see he's back in the chat.
Yeah, I see as well.
So let me see if I can add him back in, and hopefully he's there. So if he is there, we're going to go right back to Koke, and then I want to go up to Loic Remy. But it's not working. So I'm not sure if he's still there or not. But all right, so I'll move on. We'll talk about Loic Remy in a second. QPR looking at Rafael van der Vaart. Southampton, Jay Rodriguez is out until January, according to Sir Bob's notes. Stoke City is looking at let me try to add Ben back in. Let me do this, and let me do this, and see if we can get him back in. Hopefully. Hang on one second.
Hello.
There you are. Good. Welcome back.
Sorry about that. My internet just decided that it was going to turn itself off, and I've been struggling to get it back on.
No problem. I'll tell you what. Like I said, we're going to rewind this a little bit. I want your thoughts on Koke to PSG potentially.
Koke to PSG. Okay, hold on. Let me just get my notes back up. Yeah, I think another talented footballer. Really, 5 goals, 13 assists, in 36 games last season in the Liga. Someone as good as Xavi even said, quoted, Koke is an extraordinary footballer. He said prior to the quarter-final in the Champions League, he has everything, talent, physical ability, footballer of the present and the future, and it's been marked out as a conductor of Spain's orchestra for the next 10 years. I have special affection for him because we play in the same position. I think he's an extraordinary player, and I think, in fairness, we saw a lot of him last season. He really came out of his shell. He's only 22. Definitely one for the future for me, and I think he showed last season what he can do going forward. I think he would be a real awesome buy for any team. But for me, going to the French league, which I'm not saying it's a bad league, but when you compare it to Spain and when you compare it to England, for me it is a bit slower. I do think the defences are a bit weaker overall in general. And I do think that if someone of the quality of Koke went to France, he would be a real star in my eyes, and I really think that he would shine out like a proper star. I personally think that he's better than France, but PSG turned themselves into a big team now, and he's still going to get European football. So I think it's a better deal for PSG than it is for Koke, but I think he's a really good player, and I think PSG would be a good signing for them.
Do you think the move actually happens, or do you think it's not going to happen?
I think this might come down to what the clubs are looking to do going forward. I think Koke, he's seen Costa go, and so I think you could kind of see that it was a bit hard for Atletico to stand the pace. I don't think that they're going to finish in the top 2 next year, and I think realistically they needed to keep Costa, not even so much for the goals, but just for a standpoint to say, we're a big club, we're here to stay. And I know that's easier said than done, especially when the big clubs come in. Chelsea come in, offered the money, they offered the wages, and obviously wanted to leave. But I think that they needed to do that for a standpoint to show what they want to do going forward. And I think now that they've sold him, possibly it's in the back of his mind, how far can Atletico go? Is this it? And at his age, it's a big decision. And obviously PSG have got the money to spend, and I know the financial restrictions have come in now, so it might be a little bit different, but I think he's got more chance of winning trophies at PSG, so yeah, quite possibly.
Okay. So that's going to close out our rapid fire for the transfer news. Now, I started to run through the list, and I have the TalkSport page open, but I decided to use Sir Bob's list because it's pretty complete. The one that Rob and I were questioning is he's got Ron Vlaar going to Aston Villa, but as far as we could recall, Ron Vlaar's already at Aston Villa. So we're going to skip that one, but I'm going to run through a bunch of these. I know there's 2 that I want to talk about so far.
Go
ahead, Rob.
Joe, no, Ben, what's his name? I don't remember.
Ben?
No. Sir Bob.
Oh yes, Sir Bob.
He's saying some of these players are. He's also mentioning that some of these players could leave their clubs.
Oh, okay.
Like when you're talking back to Ron Vlaar, he might leave Aston Villa.
I didn't want to scroll down to see if there are any more comments because I want to start at the top of the list. So
yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. So, all right. So Arsenal looking at Nani again. Ron Vlaar might be leaving Aston Villa. So now that we've got that right, Burnley's associated with Effie Ambrose. Chelsea looking at Diego Godin, which is one that I wanted to chat about. Crystal Palace looking at Lewis Holtby. Everton Romelu Lukaku, which we talked about earlier. Hull City looking at Carl Jenkinson. Leicester City looking at Troy Deeney. Liverpool looking at Divock Origi, which is another capitalizing on a great World Cup. Man City looking at Isco, which we just talked about. Man United looking at Angel Di Maria, which is the second team that Di Maria is associated with besides PSG. Newcastle looking at Loic Remy, which I want to talk about. There was some news that came down today about that one. QPR looking at Rafael van der Vaart. Southampton, Jay Rodriguez is out until January due to injury. Stoke City is looking at Usama Asaidi. Sunderland is looking at Christian Rodriguez. Swansea looking at Kyle Naughton. Spurs look Jan Vertonghen might go to Barca, which Rob, you'd mentioned earlier would be a big one for them.
Yes, I agree.
West Brom looking at Victor Moses, and West Ham is looking at free agent striker Samuel Eto'o. So, one thing, the Loic Remy to QPR move. I'm sorry, the Loic Remy to Newcastle move got nixed today, or was put on hold because Remy failed his physical. As you might know, he flew over to the United States to Boston to have the physical done, and failed this physical. Now, apparently, this isn't the first time Loic Remy failed a physical. Back in, I believe, 2010, I had heard he'd failed a physical when on a move from Marseille, and there was under suspicion that he may have a heart condition. Ben, I'm going to run that by you first to see if you've heard anything else, being obviously in England, that you might get better access to the information. Have you heard anything about Loic Remy and his failed physical?
I haven't actually. It's the first I've heard about it. I know they said about he pulled out because he failed the physical. Just trying to see if there's anything. I don't think that there's any reasoning behind it that's been leaked. No, they're just saying Harry Redknapp. Actually, no. So there is Harry Redknapp saying that he believes it's impossible for Remy's fitness to be the real reason behind the collapse of the deal.
Okay.
So obviously there's no explanation there, but Harry Redknapp doesn't believe it's just fitness related.
It's
so
medical, right?
This is what I'm saying. So obviously there is something medical there, and obviously whatever it is, I don't believe it's been leaked yet.
Okay. Rob, what are your thoughts? I mean, what are your thoughts on Loic Remy? And really, from you, what I'm looking at is it good? Obviously, I shouldn't even say it that way. But the ability for teams to look at a player and say, hey, especially if it's in the case of a heart condition, you've seen great advances in the United States on this, especially with basketball players. We had a player coming out of college that was going to be drafted high in the NBA in the first round. I forget the player's name. I think it was from Baylor. But the day before the draft, failed his physical because they found out that he had Marfan's disease, which is kind of it's a giganticism. And I believe it's a genetic disorder. If you guys are familiar with wrestling or old time wrestling, you might know the name Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant suffered from Marfan's disease, which actually took his life early, but he was over 7 feet. So they basically, the NBA would not clear him, and he can't play basketball because of it. So, I guess it's a good thing that these medical advances have happened, but unfortunately, if that's the case, Rob, do you think that we're going to see more of that as we become better at medicine and we're spending more money on these players?
Obviously, with the advances that we have in America, I really have no opinion on, I guess you could say, medical advancements when it comes to these type of conditions. I heard of Angel Correa, who was at San Lorenzo, also has a similar situation going to Atletico Madrid. He had a heart condition, and he was sent back to Argentina.
Okay.
And for me, going back to Remy, I guess we could take away the heart condition. If Liverpool do happen to fall out on him, then I honestly think that he would definitely go to Newcastle as the striker that they need. But I'm reading what Sir Bob says. He says the rumor is Liverpool pulled out of the Remy deal because Marini will not agree to a transfer to leave Liverpool.
Oh, so really this is hinging on Fabio Borini and the fact that he won't move. So,
he's saying that Remy is perfectly healthy and in great shape.
Yep. So it gave basically they're using this as the ability to back out of the deal.
To back out of the deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that there's something's happening here. I just don't think that it's a bit cloudy and obviously no one knows quite what's going on.
Yeah.
But there's some out of these transfers. There's some real interesting ones there. I don't know if you want to pick one out, Joe. Another one out that interests you.
I like the Diego Godin one. I'm interested in that because I got to watch. If I remember, Diego Godin played for Atletico last year. As far as I know, he's still there. But
yeah, he is.
Great midfielder, strong on the ball, fantastic player. So let me see where he was rumored to go really quick here. I had it up here a second ago to Chelsea, which, they have a pretty full midfield, but he would be a great addition to that team with a great work ethic. Ben, I'll start with you. What do you think? Because you cover La Liga. What do you think of Diego Godin possibly moving on to Chelsea?
No, I think he is a decent player. I think he he's strong. He's got a good work ethic. I don't know. He's one of these kind of players. Obviously defensive. He can play at the back as well, and I think he did play centre back for a bit as well. I think with the players leaving and with Louise leaving as well, that could be a good chance for Chelsea. I mean, like we said, we're seeing a lot of players spending a lot of money out on attacking players, but I think Chelsea have got a lot going forward, and I do think that the defence played a big part in the fact why they fell off at the end of last season. So I think it'll be a good transfer for them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Rob, how about you?
No, for me, it would have been a perfect replacement for a player like John Terry, who obviously won't be there for a few more years. So I think it would, I guess if he does go to Chelsea, it would be good to learn from him. But given that Terry is aging and they need someone to support Cahill on the at centre back. But then you're also forgetting that Kurt Zouma from Saint Etienne is also a quality centre back in Ligue 1, which I think would be a perfect replacement for John Terry if he does not play a few matches in FA Cup, League Cup, etc.
Right.
Obviously, no Louise as well. Though I do think that the defence is definitely an area they need to strengthen, especially the centre.
And a guy like Godin would certainly fill.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is what you need. I mean, if you want to go straight up and you want to challenge for trophies and challenge for the league, you need established centre backs to come in. And he's big, he's strong. He's good in the air, decent tackler of the ball, and quite quick as well, and quite cool-headed. So doesn't let pressure get to him. And I think really, if you're going to play the way Chelsea like to play, and under that kind of pressure, going to be talked about for the Championship, then you need to go out and get these players like Rob's saying to possibly to replace Terry, but to replace Louise as well. And I think as far as centre backs go, they probably do need to.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So let's all right. Let's. Are there any other transfers you guys want to talk about this week that we may be talking about next week? Rob, I'll start with you. Any rumors or anything else that you might have seen or heard that might become news next week?
I was thinking about Cuadrado going to
yes,
Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
That's also one. You got I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's one. Cuadrado and Ronaldinho, him as well.
That's
He's a
right.
Free agent.
Yeah. Why don't you mention the Ronaldinho thing, because that was news. Like, you broke that to me just before it came out.
If you don't know about this yet, Ben, Ronaldinho has left Atletico Mineiro and is currently a free agent.
Oh, really?
So,
that's it. That's basically it.
That's the news, right? But Ben, thinking of Ronaldinho, 36-year-old, obviously the big name. what do you think? Give me a place where you think Ronaldinho could land right now.
At 36, I personally don't think he's good enough at this age to play in the top half of the Premier League. I think it's just got too competitive now. I think maybe for the kind of lower bottom half teams in the Premier League, mate, looking at maybe like a West Brom, someone like that. I think you go into that team and do a job. Yeah.
Rob, how about you? Where would Ronaldinho land? And I have an opinion as to where he would land, which is a great tie for us. But where do you think he'll land?
If it was up to me, I would probably say Barcelona. He's a idol over there. Or if you can't get the opportunity to play in Europe or anywhere in South America for that, why not go to MLS?
God damn it! I knew you were going to say it.
Why not MLS? New York City FC. Why not join New York City FC?
No, not New York City FC.
Orlando City.
Exactly.
LA Galaxy.
No, Orlando. I like the idea of him going back to Barcelona as a la Didier Drogba with a song year at Barca. Even if he rode the bench or he filled in for the first 4 months while Suarez was out on suspension, I would get that. But to me, the reception that Kaká picked up in Orlando, I mean, it was like Elvis walked into the building there, and the people were just all over him. A guy like Ronaldinho comes into that Brazilian community in Orlando and just totally blows the doors off. Can you imagine? They're going to sell out every game if they put Ronaldinho on that team. And unfortunately, I hate to see the MLS go the way of the NASL, where it was pick up the old player, it was pick up the older Pele and pick up the older Canalia and pick up the older Beckenbauer, and of course Bradley Orr will sort him. But that would be, to me, a heck of a pickup for the popularity of that team moving into Orlando, would be to have him go to Orlando, play along with Kaká in the first season. I mean, we've seen it already do wonders at New York City FC with Frank Lampard, with David Villa, and we're looking at Xavi Hernandez possibly moving there as well. That's the latest rumor. And people in New York are going crazy over it. So why not MLS? Why not there? So that would be the one that would interest me. And I said this would be a great segue, because now we can actually move on to the MLS coverage and get off the transfer talk for a minute. So
I do think it kind of depends like where he wants to finish. I think the fact that he went to Mineiro and he was there for 2-3 seasons, I think that says to me that he just wants to play football. Mm-hmm. Rather than winning trophies. And I do think, for me, still the Premier League's the best league in the world, quality wise, top to bottom. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think it would be. It depends whether he's prepared to take the pay cut, and I think maybe he did go to Mineiro. So I think you could still see him come to the Premier League. Phil's still not that old. There's still some central midfielders that play that kind of age. So I think I do think there's a chance he comes to the Premier League, but it does seem that the MLS is it's where you go. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Like I said, hopefully they don't turn it into an older league. They just it still continues to rise in the quality that it has been over the past, I would say, 5 or 6 years, where we've really seen an improvement in the overall play in MLS. Hopefully you don't want to see the league turn itself into this sideshow of long forgotten players. At that point, why don't we just bring Zidane over? And I've seen ads with Luis Figo on. Why don't we bring Luis Figo over and we'll put him up in Boston somewhere? That kind of thing. I just don't want to see it. I want to see I would love to see some of these younger guys come over. We talk about Bradley Orr there. Going over to Toronto. I'd love to see some of these younger guys possibly come over and take a shot there. So.
Well, this is what I was talking about. Just one more transfer, Joe, actually, before we go off it. Just one more on the list that I thought was, actually two, but just one, just quickly.
I got one as well.
All right.
Okay, well, I'll go one, and then you can do one roll, and then we'll come back.
All right.
The first one for me, Samuel Eto'o to West Ham. I think that's a good signing for them. Sam Allardyce there, he likes to play like 4-5-1 a lot away from home. And he likes big, strong strikers up front so he can play the ball long. Andy Carroll was the obvious subject. I think Eto'o can play that role, so I think that would be a pretty good signing for West Ham's what they're trying to do going forward. I could see him doing a job there at West Ham. Yeah,
I agree. I think that would be a good signing, and he does need the extra punch if West Ham are to avoid relegation this year, which they were dangerously close last year. So, Rob, how about you? What's the last one?
I was talking going back to transfers. I also forgot to mention about where Arturo Vidal will land, or Antoine Griezmann signing for Atletico.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk Vidal, because Vidal has been a sore subject for a while, and then we'll let Ben get one more in before that. But let's talk Vidal. Rob, I'll tell you what. I'm a Juventino, so my idea on this is a little skewed. What is your thought?
Well, for me, considering that he's a quality talent, very underrated if you compare him to many other players. For me, I think he deserves to stay at Juventus, and as much as Manchester United need him, they were thinking they're going to sell Fellaini to Napoli just so they can get Arturo Vidal. But for me, I don't really think of him going to Manchester United. I think he should stay at Juventus. Considering that they're in the Champions League, he wants to play Champions League, he wants to play in Europe. And that's about it.
Ben, quickly, does Vidal stay at Juventus or does he go?
I think he stays. I agree with Rob. I think you don't see many box-to-box midfielders anymore. So why would you want him to leave?
No, I agree. I think it's still water under the bridge. I don't think Vidal is leaving. I think they would have to throw crazy money at Vidal. And looking at that top 10 transfer list, I don't see Man United throwing that kind of money around at players. If we were talking Real Madrid looking at him, yeah, I'd start to worry a little bit. But I think it's going to take that James Rodriguez type money to pry him away from Juventus. And I just don't think it's going to happen. So, what people seem to forget is Juventus is a pretty big club themselves. We talk about the Bayern Munichs, we talked about Real Madrid and Barca and Man United and PSG. Juve is a pretty big club. They don't have to sell Vidal. They don't need the money like some other teams need him. So I don't think that's going to happen. So I think he stays as well. Ben, tell me about Nani.
This is one that I saw that Bob posted. I'm trying to answer his question about Bradley Orr, which I'll do after this. But this one to me made me laugh, really. I personally think that since Nani's come to Man United, at best you can say he's blows hot and cold. But I do think that he definitely blew cold last season. I wasn't even really that impressed the season before. I don't see how he would ever push himself in front of Walcott. I think Oxlade-Chamberlain is better than Nani now, and I think he's got miles to go as well. For me, Nani to Man United, that is, it seems a bit silly to me, especially with Arsenal, doing well in the window and looking to go forward. I think Nani is a step backwards, if you ask me.
Okay, Rob, how about you?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't see Nani going to Arsenal when you're competing with other strikers like Oliver Giroud, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Theo Walcott, and Alexis Sanchez for that matter. Mm-hmm. So I just don't see him going to Arsenal.
I agree with you guys. I don't know that Arsenal would really be too hot to pick him up. I think not so much as Man United would try to keep him. He didn't have a great World Cup. He had a decent World Cup at best. Blew cold for Man United last year, like you said, Ben. I don't see Arsenal really trying to get him or really being aggressive about it. I think if Nani falls into their lap, for a minimal amount of money, then that's fine. You take a flyer on the guy, but if you're going to end up spending $15 million, $20 million on him, no, it's not worth it. I don't think he's capable of returning that kind of money to you. So those are my thoughts as well. So, all right, before I move on to MLS, I'm going to ask one more time: speak now or forever hold your peace, both of you. Any more transfers you want to talk about this week?
Antoine Griezmann going to Atletico.
Griezmann, okay. Let's. All right, Rob, start us off.
No, for me, I think it was a good deal for Atletico. It's paying a good $30 million for a quality striker that has been able to play on the French national team, especially competing with Valbuena, Benzema, and Giroud. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good signing for Atletico, especially having to fill in the hole that David Villa had last season. And I was surprised that he didn't go to a club in England. But yeah, I can't wait to see what he does in the Champions League and La Liga.
I agree. He's kind of that second piece. Like last year it was Diego Costa and David Villa for Atletico. Now you're going to have Mandzukic and Griezmann. And I think that actually that pairing of Mandzukic and Griezmann to me feels like a better combination of forwards compared to the Diego Costa David Villa. And then we talk about the aforementioned Koke, growing another year and playing into that. I think you're right. I think this is a great acquisition, Ben. How about you? What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I agree with you both. I think 16 goals for Sociedad. It's a decent return. He's still only 23 years old. Yep, a good acquisition. I'd like to see what he could do there.
Yep. All right. So now, speak now or forever hold your peace, or else I'm closing out the transfer window until next week.
I got nothing.
Okay, no problem.
All right, transfer window's closed. Let's move on to MLS. Let me give you some scores. I've picked a couple of games that I'm just going to kind of get into depth with the statistical information. But starting out on Thursday, we had San Jose Earthquakes 5-1 over Chicago Fire. Real Salt Lake on Friday 3-1 over Montreal Impact. On Saturday, Colorado Rapids 3-0 over Chivas. On Sunday, we had Sporting KC 2-1 over Toronto. Columbus Crew 2-1 over the Revolution. Vancouver Whitecaps and FC Dallas playing to a 2-2 draw. And on Monday, which was actually, Sunday night, Portland Timbers 3-2 over Montreal Impact. The two matches that I picked to just kind of dig into the stats to try and get back into that groove. The first one, San Jose Earthquakes 5-1 over Chicago Fire. This was kind of an interesting result, seeing that San Jose has really floundered over their past 6 matches, which I'll get into with the standings after. We had goals by Shea Salinas in the 45th minute, Atiba Harris in the 52nd, Chris Wondolowski in the 62nd minute, Yannick Diallo in the 79th minute, and Cordell Cato to make it 5-1 in the 84th minute. The lone goal for Chicago scored by Grant Ward in the 75th minute. Also surprising because Chicago actually played fairly well against Spurs the other night in the exhibition match. So interesting to see such a lopsided victory against a weaker side. Shots on this one, San Jose took the title there 14-10. Shots on goal 9-4 in favor of San Jose. And the possession remarkably was split 50-50 on this one. So again, San Jose Earthquakes 5, Chicago Fire 1. The other match that I wanted to mention was, to Sir Bob's chagrin, Sporting KC 2-1 over Toronto. That is Sporting KC leading the way in the Eastern Conference. A 16-minute goal by Jackson to open the scoring for Toronto, followed by a goal in the 48th minute by Graham Zusi, and the winner in the 80th minute by Jacob Peterson. Matt Biesler was actually ejected from this match, picking up a red card in the 75th minute for card accumulation. So they're closing out the last 15 minutes of the match, down a man, and managed to score a goal down a man to win the match. And Sir Bob would like me to mention that the ref in the game was blanking terrible and really bad and was a blank joke. Mention this ref was blanking horrid, Joe. So I have now mentioned that the official, which I don't think I get on this match report, I can go ahead and look. I can find you his name, but shots on this one were even, 17-17. Shots on goal were in favor of Kansas City, 7-4. Toronto hit the woodwork twice on this one, and Kansas City held 53% of the possession in this match. I am going to effort the officiating crew quickly here, but I don't think I'm going to find it. I'm just quickly scanning, and I don't see it. So if Sir Bob would like to find me this offending official's name, I would be more than happy to mention it on the air and then call for his head or something like that. Luke Moore hit the woodwork twice, apparently, so Sir Bob is telling me. I didn't get a chance to see the game, obviously. So breaking down the tables in the Eastern Conference, again, the aforementioned Sporting KC on 38 points, winners of 5 of their last 6. DC United in second on 34 points. Toronto FC and the Columbus Crew tied for third place with 26 points. Toronto has played 18 matches. Columbus has played 21. Fifth place, New York Red Bull, 24 points. Philadelphia Union and the New England Revolution are tied at 6th for 23 points. The Revs have lost 6 straight. Chicago Fire on 20 points, Houston Dynamo on 19, and bringing up the rear, losers of 5 in a row, the Montreal Impact on 14 points. Heading over to the Western Conference, and I will read Sir Bob's comments in a moment. Seattle Sounders leading the way, 38 points. Actually, kind of interesting. They had quite the jump on the league, but now have Seattle has fallen back to Sporting KC, so both tied for 38 points overall. Real Salt Lake 32 points. Colorado and FC Dallas tied with 30 each. 5th place, Vancouver Whitecaps, 28 points. The LA Galaxy in 6th place with 27 points, tied with the Portland Timbers. 8th place, Chivas on 23 points, and the San Jose Earthquakes propping up the table on 20 points. Looking through the schedule quickly, we have a great match tomorrow. Seattle Sounders, LA Galaxy are going to be playing. We also, just scanning through quickly, we have a Real Salt Lake New York Red Bull clash on Thursday. LA Galaxy, Portland Timber going to be on Saturday. Toronto plays Montreal Impact for a Battle of Canada. And Seattle Sounders going to feed on last place San Jose on Sunday night. So the other thing I want to bring up at this point was, Rob, we had mentioned earlier your articles that you had written for SWOL.
Yes.
You did write the article on the Copa Libertadores, and you've really been my source for all news Copa Libertadores. But tell me about that article. Give us some points on that one quickly.
Well, it's pretty straightforward, I guess you could say. The Copa Libertadores, for the majority of the Hispanic community, especially in South America, it's a tradition to watch these matches, to see your 3 or 4 or 5 clubs from that country represent an entire nation, especially when it comes to the quarterfinals, semifinals, when it's just one team. Being Paraguayan, we tomorrow is Nacional against Defensor Sporting in Uruguay for the second leg, and if we can get no more than 3 goals, because we have a 2-0 advantage in the first leg, then we'll be the first Paraguayan team to have made the Libertadores finals since a club named Olimpia have, which is the most successful club with 3 Libertadores championships. And it would be huge for not just Paraguay, but I guess you could say just for Paraguay and the club to have a representative in the final. Not only just that's not Olimpia, but I guess switching from Paraguay, when you go to different countries in Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Chile, you want to see these nations compete, especially when you have also these young talent that could end up in Europe in the following season or so. You could look at players like Neymar, Tevez, Rodrigo Palacio, etc. Those players that have done well in the Libertadores and actually won it, went on to go to big clubs in Europe and all around the world. And for me, it should be noticed because of the passion of the fans and all those types of stuff.
Yeah, the thing that I took from your article was the fact that, to me, there's a lot more parity in the Libertadores, where in the Champions League, which is the comparable tournament, it's almost the usual suspects. Now, obviously, Atletico was kind of the outsider, but all the big clubs, PSG, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund. These were all the clubs that advanced and went deep into the Champions League, and they're all expected to. And what we're seeing here is like you said, looking at it quickly, Nacional was a 16th seed, right? And Nacional as a 16th seed beat Vélez Sarsfield, who was one of the number 1 ranked teams in the competition. Likewise, San Lorenzo, who from Argentina, who, as you pointed out in the article, is quote-unquote Pope Francis's club, was a 15 seed, and they've advanced to the semifinals as well to play Bolivar, who's surprised everyone in South America by being the first Bolivian club to get this far in the tournament. So a lot of underdog, and to me, that's what makes it exciting. Everyone talks about the NCAA tournament here in the United States. What's exciting about the NCAA tournament is not the number 1 seed going far. It's about the 15 seed beating the number 2. And that's what we're seeing here. So really brings up the excitement of the Libertadores. Now, when is the next match going on for this particular tournament, Rob? When are we seeing?
Tomorrow, like I mentioned, Nacional will play Defensor Sporting on at 8:15 American time and on Fox Deportes, and also Ben. It's going to be broadcast in the UK as well, 5 hours ahead, so 9, 10, 11, 12, 1 in the morning. It's going to be broadcast on BT Sport 1.
Oh really? Okay. Actually, Bob gave me a stream. Yeah, I might watch it. I must admit, I read the article. The article's really good, and I agree with Joe. Really, it seems that there is a lot more parity. There's a lot smaller difference between top and bottom, which I can imagine as a neutral makes a lot better viewing.
And while we've got Sir Bob on the chat and still listening to us, I know Sir Bob sent you that link for streaming. If either of you guys could send it to me so I could watch it, because I don't have Fox Deportes, I would love to be able to see.
I have a link that you might use.
All right, if you want to drop it into the Skype chat to me.
Yes, I will. It's called
so that'll be cool. Awesome, thank you.
RojaDirecta.com. You'll get all the streams for not just South American matches, but football matches in general.
Okay. Oh, cool. So, all right. So I've got to go and bookmark that one. So.
Yep.
I'll have a look at the other one as well. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Awesome.
Yep,
so, I'm glad we got to at least mention the Libertadores. Also, like the link that you had sent me, you called into Jason Davis' show, which was
I have.
Yep, that was best. Did you call it the best football show, or
Soccer Morning?
You did call it the Soccer Morning and talk about Libertadores, which was pretty cool. So I got to see that as well. So, one other bit of business that I want to clean up is the offending official in question is Ted Uncle. So, Sir Bob has it out for Ted Uncle. Let's leave it at that. So,
speaking of Ted Uncle, I just found his bio.
Mm-hmm.
It says here he's been a professional referee since 2009.
Oh, so he's a kid.
Yeah, he's only 35.
Oh God. Okay. So Ben, take us over to the Blackburn banter.
Okay, yeah, there's a few things to talk about this week, actually. I'll put them off for a few weeks, but mainly it's just the fact that Blackburn are trying to get in line with financial regulations. Anyone that knows a little bit about Blackburn, we got relegated two seasons ago now, and first season was a blowout. Second season we finished 2 points outside the playoffs, but we did have a lot of big wages on our books. The people that took us over kind of put us in a load of debt. But anyway, we got rid of 3 of the big wage players that weren't even making the 18-man squad for match day, but were on like 35, 40 grand a week, which for a championship team was silly. So we released Goodwillie, Atu, and DJ Campbell. So we got rid of some of the deadwood to help us get in line with financial regulation. But the bigger news is our best player, our top goal scorer, Jordan Rose. I was talking to Rob about this off air. I can't remember the exact goal tally, but I think it's about 1 in 2 since he's came, and he's banging goals in for fun, and he's re-signed for 5 years. So that's another bit of good news. And I checked the bookies before we came on air, and the bookies are saying Blackburn will just about make the playoffs. So hopefully we can make the playoffs. We've got a bit more experience this year, and in my opinion, a better team. And we're not going into season with 6 injuries like we did last year. So hopefully let's make the playoffs, and let's get back in the Premier League and talk about Blackburn sometimes on the show.
Ben, when is their first match? Do you know when has the schedule come out with their first match yet?
It has come out with the first match. I'm just looking for you now for the exact date. Just get it for you. Just bear with me 2 seconds. I've cleaned up my PC today and it's taken away all my links. Just give me a second. It does start. I believe it's either 1 week or 2 weeks before the Premier League starts, but I'll find out for you exactly. So we'll actually, it'll be. I think it's the first football actually of the professional season. So it's a Friday night kickoff. Yeah, it's Friday the 8th of August is the first championship game. It's Blackburn versus Cardiff. Blackburn at home at Ewood Park, and like I said, yeah, it's the first professional game of the whole English season. So. We'll try and mention it. It'll be in the Blackburn corner anyway, but it's a big game. Cardiff have just been relegated from the Premier League, obviously, as people know from last year, so this will have some kind of standing of what we're going to do this year at least.
Speaking of Cardiff, you know how much we love Vincent Tan here.
This is true. So hopefully, it doesn't matter what colour they wear. Obviously, they can't wear blue because we're in blue and white. But yeah, hopefully we can beat Cardiff. I'll take a boring 1-0.
I'm going Blackburn 6-0.
What's that?
I'm going Blackburn 6-0.
Bob's saying Johnston Paint next year. We're going down to League One, and that's really nice of him considering he's the Blackburn contingent. Now I think, in fairness, Cardiff. I expect Cardiff to go straight back up. I really do. So this will be a big game. If I had to make the predictions, even as a neutral this year, I'd say Blackburn 5th or 6th, and Cardiff 1st or 2nd. Really fine to make a prediction. But yeah, so like I said, I'd take a 1-0. But we've got a real good forward line and midfield this year. For me, the midfielders and the forwards, some of the best in the league. It's just whether our defence stands up, and I think Paul Robin's still a decent goalkeeper. But yeah, it's all about the defence this year.
Cool.
But I'll keep you all updated, and it won't be the next show, but it'll be the one after. I can fill you guys in on the score.
All right. Yeah, because we're obviously we've made a corner now. The Blackburn banter will be here all year. So we're going to follow them and make sure we're going to root them right into the Premier League. So, and Sir Bob, I think that's a crazy question. Is Ben pissed that Burnley is up? Of course, Ben is pissed Burnley is up.
Of course, this is what I said. Every single week, last year, I must admit, I do like watching the best team plays, but there's nothing like having an actual affiliation to something when you're watching a game. That little bit of extra passion, and that for me is going to be whatever team's playing against Burnley. So yeah, when it's ManCity Burnley, Bob, I'll be cheering on ManCity. So
that's right. So all right, so let's speaking of ManCity, another great segue. Before I continue on, I want to put the results of our poll question that we had up on our Facebook page, and the question was: with the 2 most expensive transfers in history happening this summer, which player will have a greater effect on his team? And it was Luis Suarez or James Rodriguez. And the winner of the poll was Luis Suarez will have a greater effect than James Rodriguez will have on Real Madrid. So that's polling our listeners on our Facebook page. So I wanted to get that out there. So let's move on to the ManCity corner, Sir Bob's ManCity corner that he's been waiting all night for. And that's why we keep it at the end, so that we keep him in the chat the entire time until we finish the show. But this last week we talked about Willy Caballero versus Joe Hart and the battle at goaltending that's going to happen, and didn't want to lead with another, and it kind of got choppy because of our audio fail last week. Didn't want to lead with another transfer story because we've done quite a bit of transfers this week. So Ben, we wanted to talk this week about Alvaro Negredo and his injury. Alvaro Negredo in training fractured a metatarsal in his foot, requiring surgery. So I'm assuming that this was, and just reading for a little further, it was a fracture of his 5th metatarsal, which also known as a Bennett's fracture, and is out now for 3 months because of the surgical procedure required to pin the bone and secure the fracture site. So I guess my first question to both of you guys is, how does ManCity move on without Alvaro Negredo for the first 3 months of the season? Rob, let's go to you first. What do you think?
For me, I don't think it's that huge of a loss for Manchester City, considering the amount of strikers that they have with Sergio Aguero and Ian and Dzeko. Okay. For me, I think it won't be as huge of a loss, but I really wanted to see how much Negredo would do at Manchester City, especially after that transfer from Sevilla. I think it was Sevilla, was it?
I believe you're right.
From Sevilla. I always wanted to see him go up to his potential, especially. But with this being sidelined, I guess we'll have to wait a few months to see what he's capable of.
And Sir Bob would like to point out in the chat that Stefan Jovetic is ready to go and he's healthy. So, so Ben, your thoughts on Negredo?
I think 2 things really. Firstly, what Rob said. I really kind of wanted to see what Negredo could do here. I know he came out the blocks quite quick last season, and then obviously it kind of fell away, and there was a problem of injury as well. I do think it wasn't a true representation of him as a player, but when we did get to see him play, I think he's big and strong and he can finish the ball and he's decent in the air. For me, I really like him. I think for me, even though Dzeko really impressed last year, I mean, obviously for me, you have to start.
Sorry about that.
You have to. So it's okay. That was just me doing an impression. No, you have to start Aguero. Obviously, that's a given. But for me, that who's going to play alongside with Aguero? For me, obviously, it was between Dzeko and Negredo all year. I know Jovetic. I must admit, I haven't seen as much of Jovetic, but I know he's there as the backup as the number 4. But I kind of wanted to see what Negredo does, like Rob said. But I do think that they're going to need Djokovic really, because 3 months, is quite a long while. I know we've heard that anywhere between 3 to 5, depending on the injury and how quick he comes back through rehab. But I still think he's going to be missed though, really, because not as badly because they've got 4 decent strikers there. But I still think you're going to play Aguero and Dzeko. But ManCity are going to be playing a lot of games. They're going to be playing those cup games as well. I know it's an advantage to them that the FA doesn't start till January, I believe. So it will only be Worthing in the league. But it's still a lot of games to be played within those 3 months. You're probably going to, you're going to see like 11, 12, 13 games, whatever it was. And if you've only got 2 strikers and Jovetic hasn't really had that much time on the bet, had that much time, he's going to have to play a part. Going to have to come on, so we're going to see what Jovetic is made of, and see if he can fill the gap. But if he doesn't, then they might start to feel the pinch, especially if Dzeko or Jovetic gets injured, or Aguero is one of them. If one of those gets a niggle when they're out for a couple of weeks, or something like that happens, or even international duty, something along those kind of lines, then you could possibly see trouble there. But I think in general that they should be alright with 3. But for me, when they're all playing their best, I would pick Negredo as the number 2 choice. So I think you'll see the miss, but it won't be a major one.
I think one thing that I want to add is a name that Sir Bob brought up way earlier in the chat, but hasn't come up since, is this kid Iheanacho from Nigeria. 17 years old. The kid, he's playing in the exhibition games over here in the United States, and the kid is a complete stud. I got to see him play a little bit. I was watching a couple of those matches on TV. Speed, size, the kid's got it all. And if they do lock this kid up and bring him onto the main squad, he's going to do some damage in the league. And I don't want to say we'll make you forget about Alvaro Negredo, but we'll certainly not be pressured to rush Negredo back after surgery to get onto the squad. I think the kid is amazing. I don't know if either of you guys have had a chance to see him play. Rob, I'll ask you first if you've gotten to see Iheanacho play at all.
I actually haven't. I
Right.
haven't watched the Manchester City matches yet. I only saw the match against Milan yesterday.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
I believe he scored in that match too.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
Yeah. Ben, how about you? Have you seen Iheanacho play?
I haven't actually, no. But I believe you're going to say if he's like that, is he in the reserves? Is he? Or?
Yeah, he's it's going to be interesting to see if they keep him as a reserve or if they bring him up to the main family and have him playing. Especially I think there's an opportunity there with Negredo going down due to injury. I think there's an opportunity for him to possibly step in and maybe get some time on the pitch to impress. So.
Bob's saying in the chat they're going to play 4-2, 4-2-3-1. So possibly it won't even be needed if they're only going to play one out and out. And if you've got 3 fit strikers, it should be enough. But yeah, like we said, how old is the kid, Joe?
17 from when 17. I checked. I think he's 17.
Is he? Sorry, where's he from?
Nigeria.
Nigeria. So there's a lot of strong, decent Africans. Sorry.
Yes.
So it'd be decent to see someone different, and maybe he might get a little bit of game time, or we might see him for the reserves, or maybe in the League Cup.
All right. So let's that'll close out our ManCity section. So let's hit the closing music and give some final thoughts here as to what we think. Let me turn the volume on this sucker down a little bit so we can be heard. Just want to mention we'll be back next week on Monday, same time, 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll talk more transfer rumors. We'll give you more of the league news, Blackburn banter, Sir Bob's ManCity Corner. We keep threatening to talk about Qatar 2022, and we may still do that next week as well. So, Ben, any closing thoughts real quick?
Something I didn't get to say because I was off air. The Rodriguez repaying 32.8% of his price tag in shirt sales. That's quite impressive. If only they didn't have to pay his wages, they'd probably pay it back quite quickly.
Yeah, it was amazing with the shirt sales that they did in the first 24 hours. So that's one way, I guess, to recoup the money. So, Rob, any closing thoughts from you?
No, for both of you guys, I just hope that you can be watching the Copa Libertadores tomorrow. Get to see some real football instead of those friendly that you see in America.
That's right. So, I want to thank our special guest co-host, Rob, tonight for coming on. Great to have you on board again and dropping a lot of knowledge. I had a great time. I'm sure, Ben, I think you probably feel the same way as I do about it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Rob. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and you're welcome on.
Absolutely. I'll be back next Monday.
Awesome. Even better. Another thing we want to talk about is we're going to have our 1-year anniversary in September, the first week of September. So what we're going to try to do is effort maybe a couple of big-name guests from the football world and see if we can't get one or two on here to chit-chat with us. So, again, from the chat, Sir Bob, thank you again for joining us as always. And left us earlier, Troy, thanks again for coming on as well. And anybody listening in the archives, thank you again for joining us. So for episode 35 of Low Limit Football, I am Joe Yu.
And I'm Ben the Machine.
And I'm Arctic Messi.
Thank you. And we'll be back again next week. Thanks and have a good night.
Yeah, thanks for listening. And thanks to everyone in the chat as well. Good night, guys.
Night.